Also have my bizarre mental health issues.
We're live.
I will stop talking about myself.
Well, we just went live, so
Moss, I also have spine issues, and you don't want to get into my other issues.
Well,
Basically, everybody's suffering. It's like Plato said, "Be kind, for everyone is suffering."
Life is suffering. Oh,
Yeah.
if I list all my medical issues, it goes more than a full
I'm
page
sure.
in 11
No,
point font. Yeah.
I'm sure you got me beat.
but
I'm
are you
sure
managing
but
those medical
you,
issues?
you've had more years
No.
to accumulate.
When they managed them medically, they got worse.
Oh,
The only medication I'm taking
No,
is
no,
blood
he
pressure.
didn't say the doctors were managing it. He said you were managing it.
He said, "Are you managing it medically?"
Is that what he said? Is that what you said?
I
Bill?
just said managing it, but
Yeah.
what I mean is you have doctors that are aware of it. You're going to the doctor.
That can't do a damn thing about it. Yeah.
Yeah, they can't turn back the clock, Moss.
Well, my kidneys have been. It's been 20 years since they diagnosed my kidneys as having failed, and I'm still not on dialysis, and that's because of what I've done, not because of what the doctors have done.
Well, that's good actually, because if you end up on dialysis, the median survival is about a year.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to stay off it as long as possible.
Well, my son was on dialysis for most of that 20 years, and they finally got him a kidney last year.
Well, that's good.
I will never forget. Many years ago, I did a security job on the side, and one of the places they had me working at was a dialysis clinic. There's been few things in my life that have impacted me like that did. I mean, you talk about some of this, what seems like the sickest people you'll ever meet. When they come in the door, they're like a shade of gray. They look dead.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they walk out, they look a little better, but some of the people are so dragged down by it. And then some people have existential crisis because of it. And
Well, this past year, my creatinine levels have skyrocketed. I'm still not to dialysis, but I am scared because I had been keeping them around 2.1, 2.2. Finally, they snuck up to 2.4, and now they're over 3.1.
Are you eating a lot more meat?
No. Should I be?
Creatine turns into creatinine.
Yeah.
So if you high dose of creatine, which is found in meat, I assume you're not supplementing like I am, then you could have higher levels of creatinine.
Okay.
what say you to that?
What I say to that is I have no clue.
Hmm.
The doctors haven't told me anything. Everything I found out about how to feed my kidneys has been my own research. The doctors wouldn't. Yeah, I keep trying to improve my diet, and like if you improve your diet by going with whole grains, then all of a sudden you've got too much potassium and phosphorus in your system, and the kidneys shut down. And I feel it. I go ow a lot.
Eat more fruit.
More potassium and phosphorus.
Yeah. Stay away from bananas.
I'm saying I can't. Yeah, the only way I'm getting fiber is by taking Metamucil.
And I take a lot of that too.
That has actually been, I think, the major thing in my weight loss has been the Metamucil, because stuff has not been being held in my bowel as long as it used to be.
Actually prefer unflavored fiber.
I take the pills. I take the capsules.
That's non-soluble. It isn't as helpful with your cholesterol.
Yeah, I take what's the cholesterol medicine? The big one, Majid.
Well,
Statins.
yeah. Well, the doctors have many times tried to put me on statins, and I
Actually, damn,
when I
that
was
reminds me,
younger,
I
I
used to have
did
mine.
take them, but I don't anymore.
I keep forgetting to take my statin. I've only just been started on it. I keep forgetting.
Here's the thing with statins. They don't have any tests to show that your mortality or morbidity is increased with artificially suppressing your cholesterol.
Or artificially increasing
Whereas
your
you are getting side effects from the statins themselves. So you're literally making yourself less well by taking the statins. I reduce my cholesterol with good old CoQ10.
All right, I'm ready when you guys are.
Oh, yeah, it is after 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why don't we do a show, guys?
There's
Is
a
it my
show?
is
Who's
it my
hosting?
turn to host? I was going to say, is it my turn to host? It's been a while since I've done it. I don't mind. I'm just saying.
Somebody should
Spin
be
her up.
keeping track of this.
Have we picked who's? We haven't even picked which stories we're doing.
I have.
Majid picked a couple.
Yeah.
I don't care about Bazite. I don't care about a lot of these. I just put them in.
Well, I suppose since I'm hosting, should I do the?
Oh,
no,
I definitely am doing Jenny.
You doing that nice short first one, Majid?
No. Bill's doing that one.
Bill, Majid.
I'm just slapping my name on the end of
Steam OS. I can't even read that one. Is there something wrong there with? Why is
What's
there a
that?
big blank space there?
Where? I do
Under
not have.
Steam OS Alternative Bazite.
I do not have blank space there, Joe.
Okay, it just fixed itself.
Oh, okay.
I blame Bill.
Go right ahead.
Well, it is your server, so
Is you gonna take it? Okay.
yeah, I got it. Ethical hacking distro Parrot OS? Hell yeah. On Raspberry Pi 5?
I didn't find any open orders for Joe. If you're waiting for a delayed package, you can check its status at your orders page on Amazon.
Alexa,
Yep.
order 13 cases of tomato soup.
If only you knew the actual word.
Computer, order 13 cases of tomato soup.
If only I didn't have a headset on.
I'm still gonna claim a win.
Okay, so is Majid hosting or?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, then fine. Should we do our Audacity thing?
I am ready with Audacity.
Yeah.
Wait, what's Audacity?
I think it looks like a pair of headsets with a head that just got vaporized in the middle.
It's ready to go. It's ready to go.
Okay. Well, why don't we do it?
Let's do it.
3, 2, 1, record.
Hey, Tyler. Want it?
Okay.
Sure you don't? He's nice, calm.
So much for that 20 seconds of silence.
Yeah, let's start it over.
Are we deleting everything and starting over?
Yep, undo record. Whose was it, Majid?
No, that was me.
That was you.
That was my lovely children.
Well, tell your lovely children to shut the up. All right. 3, 2, 1, record. Okay. That was interesting. I heard a buzzing until about 5 seconds ago.
I didn't hear any
I
buzzing.
don't know.
Okay, let's do the time. Zeros. 3, 2, 1, 0.
Zero.
Well, that was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
My job is done. Take it away, Majid.
Welcome to mintCast, the podcast by the Linux Mint community for all users of Linux. This is episode 430.
Wrong microphone.
Wrong microphone.
No.
Like all of a sudden, wrong microphone. Like you were fine before, and now
Maybe
you sound
that's
like
the buzz I heard. Stop.
you're talking in a tin can.
Yeah.
Okay, is it any better now?
There you go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
much better.
Okay, fine. All right. Let's start that again then. Welcome to mintCast, the podcast by the Linux Mint community for all users of Linux. This is episode 430. This is episode 430.5, recorded on Sunday, February 4th, 2024.
Basking in inner peace. I'm Joe.
Back for a bit. I'm Moss.
Pausing to take a deep breath, wait 4 seconds, and let it out slow. I'm Bill.
And back from traveling, I'm Majid. First up in the news, Mint 21.3 Edge is out. Ubuntu taking heat over Pro packages. Bazzite 2.2 is out. Bunsen Labs Boron is out. Parrot 6.0 is out. We say goodbye to Ginny. RPI Compute Model 5 is in the works. Say hello to Wilma. RH causes issues for CentOS, and DSL Linux makes a resurgence. In security and privacy, Ring will stop giving video to the police, and AnyDesk responds to a major hack. Then in our wanderings, Bill is moving gear around, Joe upgrades, Moss takes a new tablet, and Majid, well, myself, I'm drinking the Samsung Kool-Aid. In our Inned section, Bill explains our current mintCast infrastructure. Finally, there's some feedback, some vibrations from the ether, and a couple of suggestions. On to the news. Take it away, Bill.
21.3 Edge ISO now available. This is from the Linux Mint blog. Edge ISO is now available for Linux Mint 21.3. This image is made for people whose hardware is too new to boot the 5.15 LTS kernel included in Linux Mint 21.x or whatever. It ships with kernel 6.5 instead. For information on Edge ISO images, visit https linuxmint-user-guide dot blah 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 blah. There's a link in the show notes. That's good news for folks that have hardware that might be new. It's sometimes
Yeah,
it's,
I mean, this is always the issue, isn't it? If you're going to be staying on a LTS for 2 years, that when you come near the end of that period, we're going to be getting a new Ubuntu LTS this year and a new Linux Mint based off of that. Yeah, you do get, 5.15 is a long time ago.
yeah. I've never actually ran into something that just plain wouldn't boot with an older kernel, but I did run into a problem when I bought this machine where the kernel was not, the video driver in the kernel was not new enough to enable the hardware acceleration for Cinnamon. So I did a quick update of the kernel and everything worked. But yeah, this will allow things to just work right from the get-go.
Yeah, Bodhi takes it a step further and includes an even newer kernel from System 76.
It's important because, Linux really needs to be not just for the older machines. I mean, it does work really well for that, breathing new life, that whole thing. But people with new machines ought to be able to enjoy it too.
Well, yeah, I mean, otherwise you're missing out on a large section of people who you want to try and evangelize, to use Linux, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when I won't say I first, but when I like many other people, I used to put Linux on my old machines as a way of resurrecting them and using, getting more life out of them. And there was always an issue because at the end of the day, they were underpowered. Then when I finally started using it on proper hardware, it was just such a different experience. It was a lot smoother, obviously, because there's a lot more horsepower under the hood.
Right.
Okay, so Ubuntu Pro packages in the software updater garners some criticism. So this is from OMG Ubuntu. It seems that some users aren't happy that there's currently no way to disable Ubuntu Pro package updates from showing in the software updater tool in the Ubuntu LTS releases. Last year, Canonical updated Update Manager, also known as a software updater, to display a list of Ubuntu Pro package updates available for user systems regardless of whether Ubuntu Pro is enabled or not. And if it's not, they can't install them. Previously, only users who explicitly opted into Ubuntu Pro would see the corresponding package updates available for their systems. Now everybody sees them, and the inability to opt out or being asked to opt in is proving an irritant. Is it misguided marketing? Is it a trick? Is it an error? There's more in the link in the article. To me, this just seems more like a snafu, to be honest. I think this is just, badly written.
Well, the other thing
packages.
that I have noticed is that when I'm updating things that are based on Ubuntu, I keep getting told during the update that, gee, I should apply for Ubuntu Pro right now. And if I wanted that, I'd be running Ubuntu,
I don't know. I'm sure that distros that write on Ubuntu's back could probably patch their distro somehow to not show those warnings. But I mean, if you're hitting the Ubuntu repos, you're going to get these warnings, or well, they're not warnings, that's information really. I really think that Canonical, the decisions they make are, I feel like they're blindsided by how the community reacts to these things somehow, because they seem to gear their decisions around, their business and their profit model, and rightly so. That's what they are. They wouldn't be able to do all this unless they had a customer base, and that's kind of who they're catering for. And then for the rest of us,
I think I'm going to have to disagree, but not because I believe that Canonical are all rainbows and unicorns. It's Napoleon famously said, "Do not ascribe to malice that which can be adequately described by incompetence." It's like, for example, when 2310 came out and everybody was up in arms saying, well, you can't install Debs using the new App Center. Oh, this shows that they all want you just to use snaps, this, that, and the other. And then it later transpired it was just because it was a badly written piece of software. And, it was very easy to, fix. And I just get the feeling that a lot of the things that the community gets annoyed about, really, it's just them being a little bit shit, really. And that's,
just
that
not knowing
happens.
how to react to the community is what I'm saying. They're just not spending enough time. Like if they had one person working there that knew the open source community, that knew the Linux community, and how they would react to things, and like took the things that person said seriously, perhaps things wouldn't get released and operate quite this way,
But then, as
It
again,
might also be.
again, I'll put that down to incompetence. I'll put that down to them just, they've been in the game for a long time now, right? We're going to be hitting what, at least 20 years, if not 25 years of Ubuntu specifically, and Canonical and Shuttleworth and stuff like that. If you haven't figured out how to speak to the community by now, you are just a bit rubbish, aren't you?
But they are still making a good product, so.
Oh
Well,
yeah, no,
and they
I
haven't.
completely
Also,
I
over the past
completely
few
get that.
years, Ubuntu has stopped paying attention to their users so much as trying to set it up for corporate so they can do the IPO and make money.
Well, when I set up these servers, and I did opt into the Ubuntu Pro, and as part of that process, you give them some contact information. I started receiving emails directly from some customer service people, in spite of the fact that I was obviously on the free tier and it wasn't going to go anywhere. And I mean, I was getting hit by this one guy all the time, and it finally I let him know, like, I'll come and I'll communicate with you when I start having a problem, but right now, the Ubuntu server has been virtually problem free for me, so I don't know that they don't care about their users anymore, because they're well aware that there's a good number of people that are using Ubuntu Pro and not paying for it, and they seem to be giving that.
Is
They're
it not
just
a case? Is it not a case of that they care about their enterprise users and less about the desktop users?
yeah, I suppose that's fair.
Which is a fair, again, as I said.
You say
I
it's
know,
a
as you
matter
said,
of caring, but it's not necessarily a matter of caring. But they do have to pay the people that work for them, so they
Well,
do have to
exactly.
go where the money is.
Oh no, exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I was going to say, at the end of the day, it is kind of understandable if you are a company and you need to make a profit and you need to pay the bills and you need to pay your staff. So I do understand it. It's just as I said, I just don't put it down. A lot of people get very kind of conspiracy theory about it. Oh, look, they're purposefully, sidelining, the desktop user. They're not, as fast as they should be, blah, blah, blah. And it's kind of like, well, there's Debian for that if you really want to go that way.
Yep.
Well, they're also thinking that the community is going to handle itself just the way it pretty much always has. improvements and fixes have come from downstream back up to upstream. So let people like us do the fixing for the desktop, and they'll handle the corporate stuff.
And
the
they
stuff
do
that makes the
receive
money.
contributions from the community that they do accept on some things. There's things that they like to maintain control over. I don't know. I guess I've refused to come to a definitive opinion about this, because I rely on Ubuntu so much. We all do. I don't care what you're using. We're all relying on Ubuntu to some degree. So I don't know. It'll take a lot for me to completely turn on them. But at the same time, it's some of the decisions they make. Because you have the likes of Red Hat out there that are making decisions that are just completely contrary to what the
Oh yeah,
community wants.
those decisions are really
Yeah,
objectionable.
they're starting to
do you know what
pay
I mean?
for it now too.
Yeah, it was never going to go well for them. But that's how it goes.
Anyway, Joe, time
Yep.
for you, I think.
Okay. SteamOS alternative Bazite version 2.2 out now with lots of enhancements. This is from Gaming on Linux. Need something similar to SteamOS for your desktop or handhelds like the Steam Deck? The latest release of Bazite with version 2.2 sounds like it just keeps getting better. Technically not a Linux distribution, and they don't call Bazite a Linux distro. It's more of a community rebuild based on Fedora Linux using ublueOS/main and ublueOS/NVIDIA, with lots of extras included. It's still not yet something for beginners, with their install experience gradually improving, but for people who love to tinker, this could be a bit of fun. The 2.2 release includes some big changes like a new modified fsync kernel with enhanced hardware support, HDR, and more. You also get Nintendo HID support, a web app manager, pods as a default feature, which is great for managing DistroBox/containers, improvements to Steam Deck support, patches to GameScope pulled in from Chimera OS, and tons of tweaks to both the GNOME and KDE desktop environments available, plus lots of bug fixes. Now, I'm personally happy to hear about any SteamOS alternatives, including like Chimera OS and things like that, because there is a major issue right now in regards to SteamOS licensing to other devices. They will not allow any other device other than the Steam Deck to have any Steam branding. So if they're running Steam on there, they're not actually allowed to show the word Steam. So that's why ANEO backed out of having a SteamOS version of their handheld. So alternatives are appreciated.
I don't understand one thing though. How is this not a Linux distro?
That's something I didn't understand on this particular one either, since it was a rebuild based on Fedora Linux. But I would have to do some more research on that, because if it's using the kernel, and it sounds like it is, then it's Linux.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, go on, Bill. Next one's yours.
Lightweight distro Bunsen Labs Linux Boron is here based on Debian Bookworm. This is from 9 to 5 Linux. Coming 2 years after Bunsen Labs Linux Beryllium, the Bunsen Labs Linux Boron release has finally hit the stable channel today for this OpenBox-based and lightweight Debian derivative, a continuation of the acclaimed Crunchbang Linux distribution. The biggest change of Bunsen Labs Linux Boron release is the new base derived from the latest Debian GNU/Linux 12 Bookworm operating system series. Of course, this means that the distribution is now powered by the long-term support Linux 6.1 LTS kernel series, which will receive updates until December 2026. Bunsen Labs Linux Boron comes with new artwork called Boron Aqua, inspired by Juliet Taka's emerald artwork for Debian Bookworm. Featured the Numix icon theme, round corners for windows, a vertical tint 2 panel, and a menu with icons using the Material Solarized Suru ++ icon theme. As an alternative, the devs are offering a dark red theme set with no icons and a horizontal tint 2 panel. This release also introduces a new utility called Bunsen Apt Update Checker that monitors and notifies users about the package updates. However, this is not installed by default, so you'll have to manually install it from the welcome script on the first login. Talking about the welcome script, it's been updated with various small tweaks and bug fixes. A workaround for an issue with pseudo 32-bit systems when using URXVT and the removal of the Dropbox and Bunsen image archives installation options, yet the former is available in menu, system settings, install, favorite packages. The Bunsen Labs Linux Boron release also updates the menu by moving and renaming several icons compared with the previous Bunsen Labs Linux release. Add an improved keybinds menu under user settings, and add hard info and BL install info items under the system settings. Last but not least, the Blob theme manager has been updated with a more streamlined interface, improved wallpaper support, as well as the ability to save and restore GTK and icon themes separately. Check out the release notes for more details. If you want your Debian flavor with the lightweight OpenBox window manager, you can download the Bunsen Labs Lite Boron release right now from the official website as live ISO images for 64-bit and 32-bit systems. Bunsen Labs Linux Boron is perfect for old computers from 15 to 20 years ago. And I ran this a few years ago, and I was kind of impressed with it because I ran Crunchbang back in the day, and I really liked that. It was really, really lightweight. It wasn't a heck of a lot lighter than like an LXDE system, because in those days Ubuntu was still using LXDE, but it was just that little bit lighter at especially at idle time. OpenBox by itself is really lightweight, but at the same time gives you functionality that you're probably used to. And then if you use that Tint 2 panel, it's also very usable. So I'm a big fan of it. Of course, I wouldn't mind Crunchbang just coming back, because that was the quintessential Debian-based OpenBox distribution that came right out of the box with everything you needed, and fortuitous use of the Conky scripts to put stuff on the screen. Y'all remember all that?
Oh yeah, Conky. It's been a while since
You could really
man.
get crazy with that.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay then. So who's next? It's Joe again.
Ethical hacking distro Parrot OS 6.0 brings Linux 6.5 Raspberry Pi 5 support. This is from 9 to 5 Linux. ParrotSec announced today the release and general availability of Parrot OS 6.0 as the latest version of this Debian-based security-oriented distribution for ethical hacking and penetration testing. Parrot OS 6.0 is here almost a year after Parrot OS 5.2, and it's based on the latest Debian GNU/Linux 12 Bookworm operating system series. However, the devs decided not to ship Parrot OS 6.0 with Debian Bookworm's long-term supported Linux 6.1 LTS kernel, but with the newer Linux 6.5 kernel series for better hardware support due to backporting DKMS modules for Wi-Fi drivers. This release also ships with an improved installation experience thanks to the Calamaris installer, updated system appearance for a fresh look, yet still using the Mate desktop. Pipewire as the default audio system replacing Pulse Audio, grub fail safe boot options for more reliable and safe booting, and VirtualBox backported from Debian SID for enhanced virtualization support. As expected, all the included penetration testing tools have been updated to give you access to the latest hacking methods and techniques, and an experimental containerization feature was introduced for unsupported tools to improve flexibility. Also, Parrot OS 6.0 includes a new libc6 library and Python 3.11 to enable various tools to be upgraded to their latest upstream version. This will enable future versions of Parrot to bring in several tools that were either deprecated, dropped in the past, or that were never added before due to their integration complexity, explained the devs. Parrot OS 6.0 is available for download right now for new installations from the official website in multiple flavors, including Security Edition, Home Edition, and Hack the Box Edition. Existing Parrot OS users can upgrade to the new release by running the commands below twice in a new terminal. And yeah, apt update, apt full upgrade. The Raspberry Pi edition of Parrot OS 6.0 will be available shortly with support for Raspberry Pi 5. So the writer will do some testing and write a review and let us know how it works on the new Raspberry Pi computer.
Okay, I have a question. Ethical hacking. The legalities around it must be a bit dodgy.
Yes and no. Ethical hacking, there are some that would still be considered illegal, the ones without a contract, but the ethical hacking that is legal would be with a contract. So a company hires you, there is a signed piece of paper saying what you're allowed to test and when you're allowed to test it, and that is perfectly legal. Now, if you're hacking the Pentagon in order to leak documents, obviously that's extremely illegal, and you will go to federal prison and probably die there slowly.
Hey, you leave Discord alone.
I'm just wondering, because I have seen a couple of these kinds of distros, and I've seen a couple of YouTube channels as well which talk about how to do it. I have a friend who is a software engineer who bought a laptop off me so that he could use it specifically for ethical hacking. And I just thought, okay, go ahead, but if the authorities come to me, I'm going to say I have no idea who the hell you are, mate.
Right. Well, I've done things like I've used Metasploit just on my own stuff, just to test out and see how it worked and things like that, and found out some interesting things about my network and things like that. But I've never done anything illegal with it. You can do whatever you want to your own network, though. So
I would say arguably the vast majority of people that use these distributions, I'm not going on the record for saying this, but the vast majority of people that download Kali Linux or whatever are probably not using it for ethical reasons. But we have to talk about it in that context for reasons, but yeah, you do have that well, it's an entire profession of people that they get, like the people Bitwarden hire, for example, to come in and try to hack their systems and that to prove the integrity of their system, and that would be an example of ethical hacking where they're using the tools, but they've been contracted to do so. But yeah,
like I said, you need that piece of paper in order for it to be legal. Anything else is either black hat hacking or gray hat hacking. Gray hat hacking being you're doing something ethical, but you're doing it illegally.
Okay, then.
Then. Moss, your turn.
After 3 years on Mars, NASA's Ingenuity helicopter mission ends. This is from nasa.gov. NASA's history-making Ingenuity Mars helicopter has ended its mission at the Red Planet after surpassing expectations and making dozens more flights than planned. While the helicopter remains upright and in communication with ground controllers, imagery of its January 18th flight sent to Earth this week indicates one or more of its rotor blades sustained damage during landing, and it is no longer capable of flight. Originally designed as a technology demonstration to perform up to 5 experimental test flights over 30 days, the first aircraft on another world operated from the Martian surface for almost 3 years, performed 72 flights, and flew more than 14 times farther than planned while logging more than 2 hours of total flight time. Quote, the historic journey of Ingenuity, the first aircraft on another planet, has come to an end, end quote, said NASA Administrator Bill Nelson. Quote, that remarkable helicopter flew higher and farther than we ever imagined and helped NASA do what we do best, make the impossible possible. Through missions like Ingenuity, NASA is paving the way for future flight in our solar system and smarter, safer human exploration to Mars and beyond, end quote. What the article failed to mention is that, unlike anything else in NASA's history, Ingenuity, better known as Ginny, was powered by Linux.
Way. I think they should go for it. Just fire it up and go.
I will admit I shed a tear when I read this article.
Yeah. I heard about this on Late Night Linux, and it was
And
like,
she's too far from Perseverance, aka Percy, for Percy to go pick her up and see what's wrong.
Or for, more importantly, go for it. You're too far away to crash into anything important, so have the cameras running and fly it into the side of a mountain or something. I don't know.
Still, they'd planned it for 5 total flights, and she did 72.
It was a fantastic success. Nobody could argue against that. And, Linux for the win there. Old Linux on very old hardware, too. So it's the fact that they're able to do these things, never ceases to amaze me at all. And yeah, this is a heck of a thing right here.
Okay. Raspberry Pi Compute Module 5 is official and expected to launch sometime in 2024. This is from that fantastic website, XDA Developers. Raspberry Pi 5 debuted to much fanfare, and with good reason. The single-board computer has several hardware improvements compared to its predecessors, including a quad-core CPU that clocks around 2.4 gig, has a GPU that can reach a clock speed of 800 megahertz, making it fully capable of handling newer displays. Despite its initial success, it seems that the Raspberry Pi Foundation isn't just yet, and the Raspberry Pi Compute Module 5, or CM5, is all but confirmed and could come as soon as this year. Interesting piece of rubbish. CM5 is also the way the ECGs are done. But anyway, that's a separate thing entirely. Anyway, YouTube creator Jeff Gerling recently had an opportunity to interview Eben Upton, CEO of Raspberry Pi, which led to the reveal of the CM5 news. When Gerling asked Upton about the model, he confirms that the model is happening before suggesting it could arrive some point in 2024. Thus far, little much else is known about the CM5, aside from the fact that it will likely have the same dual connectors as the CM4. It's also speculated that CM5 will have a similar 55 by 40 millimeter form, but again, few details have been made public. With all of that being said, it wouldn't be surprising if it pulled CM4 from CM4 in more ways than one. The CM4 launched at a budget-friendly starting price of $25, and it was built on a 64-bit quad-core BCM2711 application processor. Also supported dual HDMI interfaces and included a single-end PCIe 2.0 interface. Perhaps the most notable highlight, though, was its variations. The CM4 came in 1 gig, 2 gig, 4 gig, and 8 gig LPDDR4 SDRAM models, along with optional 8, 16, or 32 eMMC flash storage. If CM5 is anything like its predecessor, it isn't hard to imagine Raspberry Pi enthusiasts and PC hardware customers clamoring to get their hands on it. So, it seems like everything that the Raspberry Pi Foundation do, just, it's like they have the golden touch,
No, there's been some pushback against them
There have
recently.
been quite a few pushes back against them recently.
Yeah,
Well,
especially with
when it
the-
comes to their hardware, or is that
yeah,
something else?
specifically when it comes to their most recent hardware, the Raspberry Pi 5.
Oh, okay.
And the starting price of it. So they're saying that they're still for hobbyists, but they've kind of gone beyond that price range. Now, it was kind of expected from a lot of people because, you know, everybody was clamoring for better hardware, better hardware, better hardware. But people also really liked the $35 price point because it allowed them to, you know, experiment with it, play with it, buy 1, 2, 3 if they had enough money, and do crazy things with it. And the starting price point on the Raspberry Pi 5 now, even though it's justified with the better hardware, really doesn't allow for that as well. Now, when it comes to the Control Module 5, the hope is going to be that it is completely compatible with all of the extensions, hats, modules that were created before it. So that way you can like pop out a CM4 and pop in a CM5. Raspberry Pi 5 now. So if they don't do that, I think they're going to get a lot more pushback hardware. Again, really doesn't hopefully they allow for that as well. $25 now, when it comes to the now. It would kind of suck for, you know, like a one, obviously that would be like their 1 gigabyte of RAM, 8 gigabyte of eMMC. But, you know, once again, if you want the 8 gigabyte, you have to expect to pay for it.
There has also been pushback on some of their hiring policies and also on some of their monetization efforts. So they are losing a lot of emotional capital in the maker community.
It is unfortunate too. I mean, I feel like this always just comes down to a little bit of misunderstanding and a little bit of miscommunication because, to be fair, they're still making pies at that $35 to $50 price point. You know,
Yeah, the 4s.
yeah.
If you can still find a 4, 2 gigabyte or a 1 gigabyte, I think that's still $35. But the 5's not.
No, but I don't. That's a proper, you know, I don't know that they could make a device that's quite that powerful and sell it at the same
agree.
price point without it being a bit garbage, you know. I don't know.
Yeah, but you're still going to get pushback from the community.
You are. But I think a lot of that could be solved with a little better communication, you know. Like if they would,
And another major thing that was mentioned to me on another podcast, I think it was Eric and a couple other people that were talking to me about it. With them going public, with them becoming an IPO, so they would then be beholden to their shareholders, and they would be legally required to maximize profits in the best interests of their shareholders, which means that they would no longer be a hobbyist company. It's that simple.
Actually, that is not entirely true, but it is how it has been interpreted for the past 40 years.
Ah, okay.
Legally, they are not required to return as much profit as possible to their investors, but they've accepted it as that's the way they want to do it. As a result, their employees are not getting paid sufficiently, and the big bosses are making the big bucks.
and on we go.
Okay, no more socialism. Sorry.
Okay, so Linux Mint 22 has been announced. So this is from the Linux Mint blog. Linux Mint 22, the code name for Linux Mint 22 has been chosen. It will be Wilma. Its Cinnamon edition will also include a new Nemo Actions organizer, and there's some other updates to 21.3 and LMDE, and they're covered in the blog post on the website. So not a huge amount yet, not surprising. Still quite early on in its development, I suppose, because the Ubuntu LTS from which it is based, will be based, isn't out yet. So it's just early stuff, really. Go on, Moss, you're next. Moss,
Moss, you're muted. Still muted.
How about now?
Perfect.
All right, I just changed how I'm seeing everything, but that's okay. Okay. RHEL's source code access change is causing issues for CentOS SIGs. From Phoronix by Michael Larabelle. It looks like the Red Hat change restricting access to RHEL sources that was announced last year is having the unintended consequence of causing headaches for CentOS special interest group projects. Published last week on the CentOS blog was the KMods SIG status update. This is a special interest group maintaining extra kernel modules for the CentOS Stream and Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Notable there is the note: due to changes in the way Red Hat releases Red Hat Enterprise Linux source code, the KMods SIG is currently unable to produce packages for Red Hat Enterprise Linux for legal reasons. We are working with Red Hat to resolve the situation and hope to be able to provide packages for Enterprise Linux again as soon as possible. End quote. Due to restricting access to the RHEL kernel sources, among other Red Hat Enterprise Linux source packages, it's causing issues for the CentOS SIG trying to improve the kernel modules experience for RHEL and CentOS Stream users. A seemingly similar kernel change was noted today by the CentOS Hyperscale SIG. This special interest group, as a reminder, is about enhancing CentOS Stream for large-scale infrastructure like those at Meta, Facebook, X, and others. Quote, the latest version in the Hyperscale SIG is kernel 6.7.1-0.hs1 for CentOS Stream 9. This new kernel is now based on upstream Fedora release rather than the CentOS RHEL kernel tree. For the foreseeable future, the Hyperscale SIG will be tracking Fedora kernels to build and release into CentOS. The kernel is still built with a RHEL-like configuration, modulo changes for CentOS Hyperscale specifically, end quote. So the CentOS Hyperscale SIG is now basing their fresh kernel builds on Fedora in a RHEL-like build rather than the CentOS RHEL kernel tree. The Hyperscale SIG also shared about their work on the latest System D updates, the new experimental GNOME and KDE Workstation live media images for CentOS Stream Hyperscale 9, and other leading-edge package updates. The SIG also continues maintaining a DNS/RPM stack with ButterFS copy-on-write support.
And this is where the pay starts coming back on them.
Yeah. So, RHEL, eh?
What can be said about RHEL that hasn't already been said about, I don't know, Komodo dragons and foot fungus?
Yeah, I mean,
Let's move on.
okay.
Probably
All right,
should.
then. So, Damn Small Linux is back. So, this is from the Damn Small Linux blog. The article's by a guy called John Andrews. The new DSL 2024 has been reborn as a compact Linux distro tailored for low-spec x86 computers. Packs a lot of applications into a small package. All the applications are chosen for their functionality, small size, low dependencies. Also has some many text-based applications that make it handy to be used in a terminal window. DSL 2024 currently only ships with two Windows managers, Fluxbox and JWM. Both are lightweight, fairly intuitive, and easy to use. It has 3 web browsers: Badwolf, which I'm assuming is somehow related to Firefox, but might not be. Dillo, make sure you say that properly, and Lynx 2. For Office applications, DSL has AbiWord, GNumeric, Silpheed, and Zathura. Oh man, AbiWord. I remember using that on Ubuntu years ago. Is it probably still on Ubuntu, actually, isn't it? For multimedia applications, it has MPV for video and audio and has XMMS, a lightweight audio player. It has some other applications like MT Paint, GFTP, LeafPad, ZZZFM. Yes, it is Z, not Z. There are 3 GUI-based games picked because they're fun and relatively light, allegedly. It's also loaded up with a whole bunch of handy term-based applications. So, question I suppose arises, why make a new DSL after all these years? The original DSL, a Verstar 50 meg distribution, was a lot of fun and one of the things the developer was most proud of as a personal accomplishment. However, as a concept, it was in the right place at the right time, and the computer industry has changed a lot since then. While it'd be possible to make a bootable X Windows 50 meg distribution today, it would be missing many drivers and have only a handful of rudimentary applications. People would find such a distribution a fun toy or something to build upon, but it would not be usable for an average computer user out of the gate. However, in 2024, nearly everyone has abandoned the sub 600 meg size limit to run on computers old enough to not have a DVD and cannot boot off a USB drive. This is completely understandable because applications, kernels, drivers have all mushroomed in their space requirements. Hats off to Puppy, I suppose, for staying on one of the few that still offer a full desktop environment in a small size. So for our younger listeners, so the 700 MB size limit was because that's how much you could get onto a CD ROM. Anyway, the new goal of DSL is to pack as much usable desktop distribution into an image small enough to fit on a single CD, or have a hard limit of 700 meg. This project is meant to service older computers and have them continue to be useful far into the future. Such a notion fits well with the developer's values, and he thinks of it as a project as his way of keeping otherwise usable hardware out of landfills. As with most things in the GNU/Linux community, this project continues to stand on the shoulders of giants. He's just one guy without a computer science degree so far, and this project bases a lot on Anti-X 23i386. Anti-X is a fantastic distro which shares a lot of the same spirit with the original DSL project. Also shares some pedigree with Mepis and also leans heavily on the geniuses at Debian. So this project stands on the shoulders of giants. So in other words, DSL is a humble little project. So says the developer. Though it may seem comparatively ridiculous that 700 meg is small in 2024 when the original DSL was 50 meg in 2002, the developer has done a lot of hunting to find small footprint applications and had to do some tricks to get a workable desktop into the 700 meg limit. To get the size down, the ISO only has US English, ENBG, ENCA, and ENAU locales. So I'm not sure what ENBG is, but ENCA is probably Canada, ENAU is Australia locales enabled. And he had to strip down the source code, many man pages, and documentation out.
I think it was supposed to have been GB, not BG.
Yeah, I was going to say
Great
it
Britain.
probably was that way around. Yeah.
Yeah.
He does provide a download script that will restore all missing files, and so far it seems to be working well. Unlike the original DSL, this version has apt fully enabled. So if there's anything that you feel is missing, it's relatively simple to get it installed. The developer has made an effort to leave as much as the Anti-X goodness enabled as possible. However, it must be said that DSL is a derivative work, but also reductive work. Some things from Anti-X may be broken or missing. If you find a bug, it's likely the developer's fault, and I would assume he wants you to let him know. So I remember DSL from about 2008.
Love it.
I didn't realize it had been around. It was there even earlier than that.
I spun this up the other day.
All right, how was it?
Well, you can get the live ISO to run in a KVM, and it works. I could not get any. I didn't play with it enough to do any like troubleshooting, but I could not get any networking to work. And the installer doesn't see the drive, so I couldn't get it actually installed. But as far as once they fix those problems, it's very usable. I mean, it's Fluxbox, but I think they've done a good job of making that look as modern as possible, but still be the lightweight desktop that it is. And, I, for one, am excited for this project. I've actually extended an invitation to the lead developer to come on the show for an interview because I was so tickled by the announcement of this. Because I think it was
excellent.
It was like a week ago. I mentioned something about this to Moss, and then all this happened. So I was kind of like, wow, that seems kind of like
It has been 12 years since the last version of DSL.
yeah. And I mean, you talk about fast and lightweight. You would probably have to add quite a bit to it to make it usable for yourself. But if you came across some old 32-bit laptop or something and everything else just dredged on it, DSL was always a good choice for that.
Yeah, I do remember DSL and trying to run it a couple of times, but never for a very long period of time. But didn't Red Hat also recently get rid of that 700 MB size limit?
I haven't heard about it, so I suppose that could be true.
Hmm.
I mean, that's
Okay.
pretty adequate anyway. I mean, I agree
Yeah.
with everything that John said in
Who
on his
uses
website.
CDs anymore?
Yeah, no, it's all thumb
Yeah, I mean,
drives, and
yeah.
Moss uses them.
I have a bunch of them sitting here. I haven't used them for quite a while. It took me a long time to switch to thumb drives from CDs because I was just so used to doing the CDs. I still do have a writer over here, though.
Well, writing ISOs to thumb drives used to be a little bit hit and miss for a while there, and
then there was Mint Stick.
Mint Stick works just fine. But I remember a time when it didn't. So, then Fedora's got their thing that works, and
Everyone keeps trying to tell me to use Belina Etcher, and I've never even gotten it to install successfully. So
I used to use
Well,
Unit
you use
Bootin.
the
I used to use Unit Bootin, and
Yeah.
that worked quite well. And then I moved over to Rufus. I've used Belena Etcher, and
Yeah.
it works fine. But surprising, for some weird reason, works best on Windows. Which is, I don't know, makes me feel a bit weird that I'm having to to make my distro bootable USB on Windows. It's anyway, it's just something a bit odd wrong about that. But yeah, that's what I find. Okay, maybe this is just me. It probably is just me, actually. I never found Mint Stick that good personally.
Hmm.
It just, I didn't find it that great
well, I think you have to
program.
actually have a .iso file for some of those tools to work. The thing about Belena Etcher is it will take a archive file and write it in a bootable manner to a thumb drive as well. So, that's, I've never had Belena Etcher fail on me.
and
Yeah, same here.
Belina Etcher is an app image,
Yeah,
so there's nothing to install.
not really.
Except I can't get it to run, so it doesn't matter that I have it on
You have
my
to have
machine.
you have to have Fuse 2 in order to make app image work, and I think Fuse 3 is usually what you get by default with a lot of distros. So you have to install that in addition.
Any more news?
No, I think that's it. And I think now we're on to security and privacy.
Alrighty then. Victory Ring announces it will no longer facilitate police requests for footage from users. This is from the Electronic Frontier Foundation. Amazon's Ring has announced that it will no longer facilitate police's warrantless requests for footage from Ring users. This is a victory in a long fight, not just against blanket police surveillance, but also against a culture in which private, for-profit companies build special tools to allow law enforcement to more easily access companies' users and their data, all of which ultimately undermine their customers' trust. This announcement will also not stop police from trying to get Ring footage directly from device owners without a warrant. Ring users should also know that when police knock on their door, they have the right to and should request that police get a warrant before handing over footage. Years ago, after public outcry and a lot of criticism from EFF and other organizations, Ring ended its practice of allowing police to automatically send requests for footage to a user's email inbox, opting instead for a system where police had to publicly post requests onto Ring's Neighbors app. Now Ring hopefully will altogether be out of the business of platforming casual and warrantless police requests for footage to its users. This is a step in the right direction, but it's come after years of cozy relationships with police and irresponsible handling of data for which they reached a settlement with the FTC. We also helped to push Ring to implement end-to-end encryption. Ring has been forced to make some important concessions, but we still believe the company must do more. Ring can enable their devices to be encrypted end-to-end by default and turn off default audio collection, which reports have shown collect audio from greater distances than initially assumed. We also remain deeply skeptical about law enforcement's and Ring's ability to determine what is or is not an emergency that requires the company to hand over footage without a warrant or user consent. Despite this victory, the fight for privacy and to end Ring's historic ill effects on society aren't over. The mass existence of doorbell cameras, whether subsidized and organized into registries by cities or connected and centralized through technologies like Fuses, will continue to threaten civil liberties and exacerbate racial discrimination. Many other companies have also learned from Ring's early marketing tactics and have sought to create new generation of police advertisers who promote the purchase and adoption of their technologies. This announcement will also not stop police from trying to get Ring footage directly from device owners without a warrant. Ring users should also know that when police knock on their door, this is repeated, they have the right to and should request that police get a warrant before handing over footage.
Okay. Now, I don't see where there would ever be an emergency where the police could not get a warrant. So the more of an emergency, the easier it should be to get a warrant. So if they want to get it directly from the company, they should always have a warrant. But if a user wants to give them the data without a warrant, then that's their right.
I will also point out that Ring is owned by Amazon.
Yeah, I mean, actually, it's interesting that this news is in here because this is something slightly different, I know, but I was reading in one of the medical journals today about how apparently personal WhatsApps done by doctors amongst themselves are also, can be used in evidence if there's any kind of issues around professionalism. And it just really, you have to be very careful with anything which is recording either your words, recording your images, recording your videos. It is we're starting to get into that dystopian future, aren't we?
Yeah, well,
We
I
have to
know
be careful.
personally,
Starting?
I know
Yes,
personally,
fair point.
I'm not allowed to use WhatsApp for any business related items when it comes to my work. So
No.
even though there is a team chat, we're not allowed to do any business, mention any actual work on WhatsApp.
So we have the same in that you're not supposed to mention anything that patient identifiable information, but the idea that you could have a personal conversation with someone that's not necessarily about work, but could then be taken, especially in the context of professionalism, because that's a really nebulous term. What is professionalism? Is having a particular political ideology professional, unprofessional? How does all that work? Yeah, you're right, Moss. We already are in the dystopian future.
I will point out that I recently saw on my Mastodon account that BetterHelp, which has been trying to push people into mental health care through their company, is not HIPAA certified and has been selling users' data to Facebook, among other people.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by that actually. But then the legislation in the US is a lot looser than you have in. I was going to say the EU, but we're technically not in the EU, are we, in England anymore? But we still have GDPR, for example, which has been helpful in limiting a bit of that. Anyway, moving on. Anydesk says hackers breached its production servers and reset passwords. So this is from Bleeping Computer. Anydesk confirmed today that it suffered a recent cyber attack that allowed hackers to gain access to the company's production systems. Bleeping Computer has learned that the source code and private code signing keys were stolen during the attack. For those who don't know, Anydesk is a remote access solution that allows users to remotely access computers over a network or the internet. The program is very popular with enterprise, which use it for remote support or to access calculated servers. The software is also popular amongst threat actors who use it for persistent access to breach devices and networks. The company reports having 170,000 customers, including 7-Eleven, Comcast, Samsung, MIT, Nvidia, Siemens, and the United Nations. In a statement shared with Bleeping Computer late Friday afternoon, AnyDesk says that they first learned of the attack after detecting indications of an incident on their production servers. After conducting a security audit, they determined their systems were compromised and activated a response plan with the help of cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike. They didn't share any details on whether data was stolen during the attack. However, Bleeping Computer has learned that threat actors stole source code and code signing certificates. The company also confirmed ransomware was not involved, but didn't share too much information about the attack other than saying that their servers were breached, with the advisory mainly focusing on how they responded to the incident. As part of their response, AnyDesk says they have revoked security-related certificates and remediated to replace systems as necessary. They also reassured customers that AnyDesk was safe to use and that there was no evidence of end-user devices being affected by the incident. We can confirm that the situation is under control and it is safe to use AnyDesk. Please ensure that you're using the latest version with the new code signing certificate, AnyDesk said in a public and not in any way alarming statement. While the company says that no authentication tokens were stolen out of caution, AnyDesk is revoking all passwords to their web portal and suggests changing the password if it's used on other sites. AnyDesk is designed in a way which session authentication tokens cannot be stolen. They only exist on the end user's device and are associated with the device fingerprint. These tokens never touch our systems, AnyDesk told Bleeping Computer. We have no indication of session hijacking. As to our knowledge, this is not possible, is another thing they said. The company has already begun replacing stolen code signing certificates, with Gunter Born of Born City first reporting that they're using a new certificate in AnyDesk version 8.0.8 released on January the 29th. The only listed change in the new version is that the company switched to a new code signing certificate and revoke the old one soon. Bleeping Computer looked at previous versions of the software, and the older executables were signed under the name Philandro Software GmbH with a very long serial number, which I'm not going to read out. The new version is now signed AnyDesk Software GmbH with another very long serial number, which I'm not going to read out. Certificates are usually not invalidated unless they've been compromised, such as being stolen in attacks or publicly exposed. While they haven't shared when the breach occurred, Bourne reported that AnyDesk suffered a 4-day outage starting on January 29th, during which the company disabled the ability to log in to any of their clients. It just kept on saying that it's currently undergoing maintenance, which is expected to last for the next 48 hours or less. You can still access and use your account normally. Logging into AnyDesk client will be restored once the maintenance is complete, is another message that used to come up. Yesterday, access was restored, allowing users to log into their accounts, but they didn't provide any reason for the maintenance in their status updates. However, AnyDesk has confirmed to Bleeping Computer that the maintenance was related to the cybersecurity incident. Strongly recommended to all users to switch to the newest version of the software, as the old signing certificate will be revoked. Furthermore, while AnyDesk says passwords were not stolen in the attack, the threat actors did gain access to production systems, so change your password. Also, if you use the same password anywhere else, change it there as well. Every week, it seems like we learn of a new breach against well-known companies. Last night, which is a couple of days old now, we're talking about February the 1st, Cloudflare disclosed that they were hacked on Thanksgiving using authentication keys stolen during last year's Okta cyber attack. And last week, Microsoft also revealed they were being hacked by Russian state-sponsored hackers named Midnight Blizzard back in May. Does anybody use AnyDesk or have it used in their enterprise scenarios?
No.
No.
Do we think this is big?
Yes.
For the people that use it, yeah.
Yeah. I one of my favorite t-shirts is I am root. You should change your password.
I like that. I like that. Cool. All right then. So if we've got not much more else to say on that, we should get on to the bi-weekly wanderings. Go on, Bill. Start us off in a very cheery and happy way.
Oh, well, let's see if we can do that, huh? Well, as some would be aware, my mother-in-law has been recently diagnosed with a combination of brain and lung cancer. Oh, shucks. No cheery. And this last
I mean,
week,
that is a bit shit, really.
all I can do is laugh, I guess.
Yeah, but it's either that or cry. And I don't want to see you crying or hear you crying on this.
There's been enough of that, quite honestly. This last week and a half has been all about that, dealing with affairs and that. I mean, it never surprises me. I shouldn't talk about this, but I'm going to anyway. The way family members, some of the best and worst personality components come out in full strength when something like this is happening, and the people that are shit are just more shit, and the people that are great, they're great. That's all I'll say. So yeah, that's been taking up much of my time. I actually had to take Thursday and Friday off to help out with a lot of that. So I did manage to get some time to get my Think Center M93P transplanted into the new Antec P101 tower case, which is identical to the one I transplanted my Dell PowerEdge T40 into a couple of weeks prior. These cases are huge. It's these things back behind me look like refrigerators. They've got lots of hard drive bays. In fact, they've got 8 3.5-inch hard drive bays, and then 2 2.5-inch in addition to that. But the best feature, in my opinion, is the sound dampening. If I were being honest, I'd admit the reason for transplanting the Think Center was more cosmetic than anything else. In stark contrast to the reason I transplanted the Dell to begin with. The T40, which among other things runs the Jellyfin server, the Nginx reverse proxy manager, and several websites. The case it came in, while modern looking and not too ugly, was plagued with vibrations and buzzes and ticks everywhere, just because the way that it was put together and the plastic and the way it dealt with heat and all that. It drove me crazy. It actually came across on the microphone a few times, and I had to deal with it. These Antec towers have sound dampening panels on all sides. The only time I hear hard drives chugging away is when something intense is being done in terms of writing, or like if a Z-Pool is doing a scrub or something, because that's during that sort of operation, every single one of the drives is kind of chugging at the same time. These cases take up considerably more room. What was I saying there? These cases take up considerably more room than their predecessors, but in my opinion look better and are functionally more appealing. They've got a lot better cooling. There's 3 fans behind the doors open up in the front, revealing 3 fans that blow inward, and then there's a bigger fan in the back that blows out, which might be just a gimmick, but it's still kind of cool. But they're huge. They're enormous. You put everything into these things, and it still looks like you could fit 3 more computers in it, which I suppose is all right. I recommend these cases to anyone wanting to build a server. They'd be all right for a desktop, but really I think they're meant because of how many hard drives you can slide into these things. I think they're probably more suited to somebody building a home server or something. So also, some may remember in a previous episode, I was exploring LMDE running with the SID or unstable Debian repos enabled. I've been running that in a KVM, to be honest, for some time with minimal trouble. I did have 1 or 2 little hiccups that I was able to deal with, and my confidence level kind of got to the point where I thought I could deal with it full time. So I decided to take the plunge and install it on this production machine. And I'm pleased to announce I've taken that plunge full speed. This episode right here is being streamed using LMDE6 with Debian Unstable on the background. I won't go so far as to recommend this to anybody. Just people like me, really, that, well, there's a reason why I prefer things this way, but I'm not going to say it.
So if the website crashes, blame Bill.
Yeah, well, no, the servers are still running Ubuntu LTS. It's just this machine here. So if the live stream goes awry, or if something like that happens, then yeah, you'll know. In other words, if you're not hearing my voice right now, then it will be because of LMDE or my choices. Another thing to consider is that with this configuration, I'm fully at mercy of Pipewire for the first time. A rather new technology, I suppose, that will take some time to grow comfortable with. There were times not that long ago when, for the sake of keeping a simple system, I ran bare bones ALSA. Obviously, that's not an option anymore, so I'll do what is necessary to get accustomed with this new thing. I've been on Pipewire for some time with my laptops, but my sound needs on those machines is considerably less complicated. I've spent some time setting up and testing the applications that I use to make and stream all of my shows, and I'm confident that things will go well. If you're hearing me right now, then that's all the testimonial I need, I suppose. It's, in most cases, Pipewire should and does run sort of transparently if you've got all the necessary stuff installed. The same tools that worked for Pulse Audio you should be able to get to work as long as you've got the Pipewire Pulse application installed. You've got all the bindings and everything that work with Pulse Audio. So far, I'm happy with it. It meant that I didn't have to run Audacity as a flat pack or a app image. I've got the up-to-date version of it right from the repo. There are other applications. I've learned that there are applications, or there's starting to be applications, that have geared themselves to rely on Flatpak 100%. Like there's an application out there called Easy Effects, which is the successor of the Pulse Effects application, and it just does some filtering and some enhancements in real time to either stuff you're listening to or stuff you're recording. If you install that from the repo while you're getting the up-to-date version of the software, when you try to run it and you try to enable certain filters and certain enhancements, it comes right out and tells you this version was it was compiled without those things, and then it goes on to say that you should go and get the Flatpak version. And that's kind of the case with some other programs too, like OBS Studio, for example. They come right out and tell you that they recommend the Flatpak of OBS because that's the version that comes with the embedded browser that you need for we're not using it right now, but for my other shows we use Video Ninja, and you got to have the embedded browser for that. So it's like you've got to kind of know what package format these developers are preferring, because if you go outside of the distro ecosystem with something like Audacity, well, Audacity, they recommend their app image. That's the one that they directly develop. So I don't know that we're any better off because of these new package systems. You know, you still have to know which one works better than the other, and you're not going to know that until you do the research. So I don't know. I don't know how I feel about all that. Anyway, that's about all I've got. Joe, what about you?
Okay, well, for me, it has been busy, but I feel like I haven't gotten a whole lot done. My wife and I celebrated our 21st wedding anniversary, but We mostly did that just by spending time together. We decided not to do gifts this year.
Well
We just
done,
had a
Joe.
simple dinner at our favorite restaurant here in Texas and did some walking around afterwards. It was kind of nice. But we also decided that we needed to upgrade our phones since the Note 10 Pluses were getting a little long in the tooth. We were able to get a good trade-in on them from T-Mobile and got the S24 Ultras at a really good price. And because we got the pre-order special, we also got double the internal storage, so like 512 gig. I don't use a lot of the internal storage, but I do have 20 plus years worth of photos that I've been moving to all of my devices since I started taking photos with a phone. I will say that while the phone feels a little bit heavier in the hand, it doesn't really feel like that much of an upgrade. Maybe it's because of the built-in process of transferring everything from one phone to the other and like the background and all the applications being the exact same. But I haven't really noticed that much of a performance difference. Maybe I'm just not, stressing it enough for that to happen. I would have liked to be able to keep the old phones as well, but the trade-in was just too good to pass up for those. So to offset the added monthly cost of the phones, I also switched to AT&T Fiber, which is relatively new to my neighborhood. Um, it was fairly easy for them to come in and get it all installed. They still need to come and bury the cable, but the hardest part was getting the pass-through set up so that my router was public facing instead of their modem and router. And lots of phone calls and lots of, fiddling with stuff to actually finally get it to work. Hopefully, they will be reliable, but you can't argue. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to interrupt because I just noticed your bit about the S24, but I'll let you finish this bit and then I'll ask you.
Yeah, I kind of figured you did the exact same thing, and that's why your intro started that way. Now, hopefully, AT&T is reliable, but you can't really argue with 300 up and 300 down. And after my military discount, I should only be paying like $35 a month, plus a $150 gift card and $50 towards my first bill. I'm going to call that a good deal for now. Although it did take me a while to wade through the tech support people to find one that could assist with the pass through, and it did get a little frustrating re-explaining the same things several times over. But all of my servers are now up and running, and I can access them all from anywhere. Now, I will no longer be the owner of the modem the way that I was with Spectrum, but at least they're not charging me a monthly fee for it. Plus, it can also work as a backup router if mine fails. It does have both 2.5 and 5 gigahertz built in, and it would not take me very long to redo the port forwardings. I would lose my DNS in that case, though. Canceling the Spectrum was also a bit annoying, with them trying to retain me and offer me various deals that were not as good as what AT&T is offering me. It is also just plain annoying that you have to call them, literally call them, in order to stop service. Yes, I have been with them for a very long time, and some of the speeds they were offering were pretty darn good, but the price is just better at AT&T. And I know that the speeds are more likely to be true there as opposed to a coaxial network that will be congested when the neighborhood is busy. Moving on from there, I didn't really do a whole lot of 3D printing. I printed a toilet paper roll holder with a shelf that was mounted using some 3M tape, some 3M two-sided tape, and I also 3D printed a cup holder replacement for my Gazelle exercise machine. I printed the cup holder before, but I couldn't find the one that I had done before. And the only thing interesting about that print is that I used the 3MF file instead of an STL, but it works the exact same way. So that's about it for me. Not very exciting.
Go on, Moss.
Okay, my turn. I've attempted to get back to work as my wife's knee surgery continues to heal. Not many openings lately, though. Of the last 6 days I've been available, I only got one job. Her second knee surgery has been pushed to late May or early June so I can finish out the school year. I purchased a used Pine Tab 2 from our listener, Jackie Moore. I received it on January 31st, and Bill ordered me a Wi-Fi dongle for it. I have amazing friends. There is a Wi-Fi chip in the device, but they have not yet finished the driver for it or for the Bluetooth adapter, although word is it should be ready soon. The dongle arrived, and I've done all my updates and most of my app installations. I can't manage to get Discord installed, but if I'm going to mostly be using it at school, that's not an issue, as the school's Wi-Fi blocks Discord anyhow. By the way, it runs Arch. No comments? Okay.
No, just that, you know, have you joined the Arch cult as well?
I have not been brave enough to try to put something else on my new tablet.
Yeah, I was informed too. Well, I have the honor on behalf of the Arch Linux community to welcome you. Where have you been, Moss? It's okay. We know where you've been.
Now, I expect it to crash sooner or later because I've been allowing Discover to do all the updates.
Discover has gotten some bad press over the years since it's come out.
Well, yeah, because it's not very good, is it?
No, it's not. I
Okay.
almost never use it.
I had a brand new episode of Full Circle Weekly News get published just before the show today, so I did a little bit of promotion on that. Bodhi Linux has come out with betas on 32-bit Debody, Bodhi based on Debian, and 64-bit Debody. I've been running the 64-bit studio on my 64-bit. I've been running the 64-bit on my studio machine for a couple weeks now, and it's a thing of beauty. The 32-bit version is already into a second beta. Look for them on the Bodhi Dev page of SourceForge if you're interested. I'm falling behind on my review for this week's Distro Hoppers Digest. I say this week's because we are going to be recording it probably on Thursday. I made the mistake of installing the Enlightenment WM on it instead of just keeping Fluxbox. The issues of getting things set up are stymieing me. Carfax has been telling me for months that I'm overdue to get the brakes checked on my lovely little Mazda 2. I took it to the brake shop and left with a $417 bill for new rotors and pads on the front. The pads at least had an unlimited warranty. And they cleaned the rear brakes for free, quote unquote, which were quite filthy to the point that most of the screws and such were frozen. So I have to do maintenance on the car, but nothing ever breaks on it. I am very happy with my Mazda 2. Anyhow, that's about it for me, unless you want to babble at me for anything I just babbled on about. And otherwise, we can move on to Majid.
Okay, so it's been a month since I've been on, so you'd think I'd have lots to say, but it's been January, and so that's not necessarily the case. So even though I have a OnePlus 11, which I bought relatively recently, and I've been really happy with it, I've been doing a bit of traveling, which I'll get to in a second, but I found the camera was a bit disappointing. I hadn't taken many pictures since I got the phone back in September. So it was only, I only really put it through its paces when I went on a recent trip to Morocco. The fact that it charges very quickly, had good battery life, all of that was great. Dual SIM as well. But the photos and videos were not bad per se, but it was a really memorable trip, and I just wasn't happy with the output that I got, you know. And it hadn't been a cheap phone, you know. It had cost me what, $800 for the 12 gig and 256 gig version. And it's not as if like I was taking photos in, you know, bad lighting conditions or videos in bad lighting conditions. You know, it's Morocco. It would, you know, the temperature was, oh God, I've got to go into Fahrenheit for you guys, haven't I? But it was in the 70s during the day, got a little bit nippy at night, but you know, it was sunny, it was nice. There was, you know, there weren't very challenging lighting situations in which you might say a camera might struggle. So, you know, when I got back from Morocco, I was, you know, showing these pictures off to my my wife and to the kids and to my mom and wife, and I just wasn't happy. By the time I had come back, all the S24 Ultra coverage was everywhere, and I've got to be honest, I got sucked in by the hype. I managed to find a deal where I got the 512 gig SKU of the device for a £300 discount. So in the UK, The pre-order price for that was about, I want to say $12.99. And I was getting it for about 900, and that was before I put any trade-ins in, and it was on 3-month interest free. And so I just thought that this was too good a deal to miss out on, so I bought it. I felt I did have to try and close some of the money back though, so I sold that OnePlus 11. I sold a couple of other things that I had in the house. This included a TicWatch Pro 5, which I'd bought very recently, and the MetaQuest 2, which I think I mentioned before, which was very gimmicky, if quite cool. Thankfully, these were still within the Amazon returns window, so I was able to just return them. And also, I managed to sell that OnePlus on eBay very quickly, like to the extent that my S24 Ultra hadn't arrived yet, and this one had sold.
You don't have Swappa in the UK?
We do have no, we don't have Swapper actually. We don't have Swapper. We have Computer Exchange and a couple of other things, but no, we don't have Swapper. And anyway, so I did manage to sell it, though for less than I wanted really. So also while I was on my travels, I managed to lose one of my earbuds. I had these Earfun Air Pro 3s, which I'd got on a Black Friday deal from Amazon, which I know they're not exactly well known, but they had some very good reviews, and I quite liked them actually. You know, they had good active noise cancelling. They supported the new codecs like aptX and things like that. So I was a little bit annoyed actually that I managed to lose one of them on the coach ride to the airport. So whilst at the airport and in the duty free, I found some. I looked to see what else I could have. I hate traveling. I mean, as in, I like going to places in the sense of I like, seeing different cultures, different countries, all that sort of stuff. But the actual logistics of traveling, coaches and planes and taxis and flights and all that sort of stuff, they really stress me out. To the extent that it's a problem. It's a genuine problem. And this... Sorry, go on.
You also just admitted to paying airport prices for Samsung Galaxy Buds.
They were surprisingly, it was a good price.
Oh,
that was the reason
okay.
why I went for it. So they're normally about $130 in the UK, and they were there for 100. I know it's not massively less, but it's still less. And I thought to myself, okay, let's just get these. So now, kind of by accident, I found that I have drank the Samsung Kool-Aid and I'm completely in the Samsung ecosystem because my phone is an S24 Ultra. My tablet is an SA. I have a Galaxy Watch 4, which is the only smartwatch I've got left because I got rid of the TicWatch. And now I've got these Galaxy Buds FE. And so might as well embrace it. Yeah, embrace the Kool-Aid. See how it goes. Life goes with it. It's definitely more seamless than having a variety of different Android manufacturer products, but then Android things are pretty interoperable anyway, so I'm not sure I'm noticing as much of the... I apologize for my spelling, Moss. I was quickly doing this yesterday, but so maybe it's not as much of a slam dunk, but it is nice to see how well they work together. I'm actually very happy with the S24 Ultra, actually. Surprisingly, actually, because there was a part of me thinking, you've just got sucked in by the hype, haven't you dumbass? Yeah. But actually, it's really speedy. It forms really well. I do love the S Pen. The camera works really well. I love that it's got this new anti-glare screen, which means that watching anything even outside is the reflections have decreased. It's really good. And having a 512 gig removes any semblance of any kind of storage anxiety. The only one thing I'm not happy about is the relatively slow charging. I have got the special Samsung charger, which goes at a max of 45 watts, which is okay. But I had kind of got used to the 100-watt charging of the OnePlus, which was especially great while traveling because you just plug it in for 10 minutes and that's the rest of your day is fine. It is actually a pretty minor gripe though, because the actual battery life is good. I'm ending most days with around 50% left. And that's with me,
Right.
using it watching stuff. I've been at the gym today, so streaming stuff on Bluetooth. It's in the car. You know, this thing came off the charger, I think at about 1 o'clock in the morning, something like that, because that was the time when I remember getting up, seeing that it was charged, and I just moved the phone. And so it's that, you know, that's pretty good, I think.
Yeah, my only major complaint with it is the fact that, and it's not even to do with the S24 specifically. It's the fact that Samsung has decided that my watch, the S3, not the S4, the S3 Frontier, which is one of the best looking watches that Samsung made, is just not going to work on it because it's too old. They just arbitrarily stated that they're no longer going to allow it to work.
Planned obsolescence, eh? To make you buy something new. That must be what they're doing.
Yeah.
You know, which is really, it's a really shitty thing to do. But
well, it was also interesting because the day after the announcement, you could find a whole lot of S3s on Facebook Marketplace. The S3 watches on the marketplace.
Yeah.
As for the spelling issues, Majid, we supposedly have a spell checker on this system, and I ran over this very carefully, and it didn't catch any of those.
Okay. Wow. You know, that's Calabra for you, I suppose. I think I mentioned last time I was on that I was trying another experiment, and that was to see if I could use Samsung DeX as a work replacement. I'd found a cheap 2022 Tab S6 Lite on eBay, and so I thought I'd try this out. End of the day, the device is a bit underpowered. It's a bit laggy, especially when you got DeX running in full, you know, desktop mode, as it were. And it's just easier to use my laptop. I think I should just accept that this is just the way it is. Just use your laptop. It's just better in many different ways.
The only way that I found that, you know, makes it like a viable, like in your pocket computer with DeX is to also use Chrome Remote Desktop and basically have a Linux system. It's also set up for that and be able to run it and just stream it to your phone.
Okay, I'm gonna have to look into that. I remember you mentioning that a couple of months ago when it came in one of the innards, didn't it, about remote desktops and stuff. I need to. I've meant to, but I haven't got around to looking into it really. From a Linux perspective, I'm starting to lose patience with Manjaro. Yes, Bill, I use Arch as well.
No, you don't. You use Manjaro.
Oh, shut up. Yeah, but there's just too many paper cuts and jank. Do you know what I mean? Like, for some reason, my cloud files are not syncing. I can't figure out why. I've done all the updates and this, that, and the other, and I'm just I can't be bothered. You know, I have a finite amount of cognitive space and time. You know, and whilst I do enjoy tinkering, hence I'm in this bloody podcast and into Linux and everything as well, it does start to get a bit annoying after a particular, because sometimes it's like, can you just work, please? And at least the Ubuntu or Ubuntu based distros, whether it's Mint or whatever, you know, everything has its, you know, issues, but I can somehow manage with those. Maybe it's just also because I'm so unfamiliar with the way that Arch, Manjaro, and all that works. So I'm feeling a little bit out of my depth. I don't know. The only reason I haven't distro hopped is only because I haven't had time, really. I'm still running Ferron on this desktop though, which really is Mint with KDE, with all the benefits that kind of package would entertain. Works fine. You know, I've got all the snazzy stuff from KDE, and you know, I've got all the kind of stability of the back end that Mint have done to the Linux and Ubuntu kernels. I'm sure I'll get bored and want to move on, but as of now, it's fine. I mentioned
Bodhi.
Okay, so the only thing about Bodhi is I'm not sure I'm a great fan of the Enlightenment desktop.
Bodhi.
Oh, so Bodhi is the Debian version, right?
Yep.
Like their LMDE. But
and
is it
Mocha,
still?
believe me, I like I said in my wanderings, I am having problems getting along with enlightenment on Sparky, but moksha I am completely comfortable with. It seems like a totally different thing to me.
It's because it is a totally different thing. I think the reason moksha comes along is to make enlightenment a little bit more palatable for people, I think.
Definitely more stable.
Yeah.
E17 was the last truly stable version of enlightenment, whereas if you're getting enlightenment through the Debian repos, it's E25 or 26.
Well, okay, so maybe that's the next one to go for. I did also want to try and dip my hand into the Fedora world because it's been a long time since I have run anything on that side of the spectrum, as it were. But I've always, my very long ago experiences with Fedora were that it didn't work well in dual boot setups. And so I'm a little bit apprehensive about going down that road because of that. Is that necessarily true? Or is that just,
Well,
a myth?
anyone that's going to dual boot really needs to get comfortable with managing the partitions manually, right down to the nitty gritty, like telling the installer exactly where to put what, because the installer, I don't know, sometimes they see the other distro or the other operating system there and they play well with it, and sometimes they just don't. And I've found the only way to mitigate that is to get comfortable with dealing with it yourself and then go into the manual partitioning and learn how to make sure that you're flagging the right partition as the boot partition and the EFI boot partition, and then it should work. You just have to get comfortable with that because you're right, that there just are some distros that they don't even try to play well with dual booting because it's just not.
Yeah,
I
I
suppose
remember
it's not as popular as it once was.
I remember trying Elementary 7.1 when it came out, and I tried to do it as a dual boot and just couldn't get the thing to work, basically. And it lasted all of about 6 hours on that machine.
The thing you'll run into more often than not, and this is probably what Moss has ran into, some distributions will use a LVM setup where it will create the logical partition, and then inside of that you'll have your boot partition and your root partition, and then you go to install your next distribution and it will not see that there's a boot partition already made. So it will create another one beside, because it can't see inside of that LVM.
Right.
So,
about 80% of what I do actually goes to SDA as the default for where to put the boot partition.
yeah.
And if you have a boot partition it can see on SDA, you're fine. But otherwise, nope.
Yeah, and that's why if you do it manually, then you can go inside of that LVM sometimes, unless it's encrypted, and then you've got a whole nother bunch of problems to deal with. So that's probably the problem that most people run into with dual booting. But yeah, there you go.
Okay. I mentioned a little bit about traveling. So, without one trying to bore people, I basically joined this Sufi Islamic lodge back in November. It's basically a kind of school of spirituality within the Muslim tradition. It's not something I'd ever been into before. As part of this, the group are making a trip to Morocco to meet the spiritual leader over there. I thought it'd be good for me as a new initiate into the thing to go. The trip was memorable for many different reasons, but the actual traveling was a bit much for me. It was 3 hours to the airport. It's 3 hours on the flight, which isn't that bad. But then 3 hours from the airport to the border with Algeria, where the center was, sleeping in a hall with 30 other people, sharing 3 toilets. I'm far too middle class for this. The food, on the other hand, was amazing, and food which I wasn't expecting. It wasn't exactly a coastal place, but the seafood that they had was unbelievable. Really nice. Work has been all right. I manage the junior doctors, the residents, and it's like having children you can't scold. You know, I can teach someone how to do a procedure, but I can't teach professionalism, and that's becoming an issue. Maybe it's a generational thing. I don't know. Maybe I'm just turning into a curmudgeonly old man. I don't know.
You can't teach work ethic.
Well, yeah, exactly, man.
Yeah, you got to go back in time.
Flipping heck, man. There's professionalism. Anyway, but the actual work is fine. Our strikes have been suspended because there's been a pay offer. Now, the pay offer was rejected, 51 to 49%, but because it was so close, it was felt that further industrial action wasn't justified. What does this mean in reality? I don't personally know. I have a feeling that the government will probably impose the new pay offer deal on us, and then they're not going to give a shit because they're going to get voted out in about 6 months' time when the election comes. So they're not going to care. As a patient, though, I'm sorry to say that the National Health Service has collapsed. My wife has a couple of health problems, and getting anything done has required me to flex any kind of influence I have in the hospital. Ringing up people, calling people on their private numbers, dropping I'm the college tutor, I'm the consultant anesthesiologist, blah, 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 all this kind of stuff to try and get stuff done. And people must be falling through the cracks. And I really feel that normal people, inverted commas, are being let down by the system. It's bad. I don't like it. I really don't. I'm just anyway. I don't want to get too depressed about, so I'm not going to talk about any more about that. Been listening to a lot of Beartooth recently. I do like Caleb Shlomo, and his lyrics on mental health really left an impact. So if you're into kind of rock music, metalcore, but a bit more kind of melodic type stuff, have a listen. I've been watching the new True Detective as well, the Jodie Foster one set in Alaska, and it's good. I might say it's only very early on, but it's probably, season 1 of True Detective was the best by far. I think this is coming up to second. I actually quite liked season 2 and season 3, but I think this would probably come second in the lineup. I was actually watching the new He-Man as well, which I managed to run through in a day. My wife was like, "Oh, are you watching your old TV programs from when you were a kid?" And I'm like, "No, actually, this is new," which is funny. But there's also this British drama that we're watching called Fool Me Once on Netflix, which my wife is really enjoying, but it's really annoying me because whenever you watch any of these, whenever you watch any kind of TV program, you have to have a kind of emotional connection with some of the characters that are involved, right? And this central character is really, really irritating. She's like the definition of an entitled white woman. I just sat there thinking, if I had done that, I would have gone arrested. If I had done that, I bet I would have got shot, etc., etc. But anyway, my wife likes it, so I have to sit through the next 2 episodes.
Is her name Karen?
It's not, but it's Maya. Do you know what I mean? It's like a house. Oh.
So now you're gonna meet a perfectly reasonable woman named Maya, and you're gonna take out all of your rage on that poor woman.
Yeah, probably. Anywho, that's enough for my wanderings. So the innards this time, we're going to be talking a little bit about our infrastructure here on mintCast and what it took to get it up and running, what changes we've made over the last few years, and what we're hoping for the future. I suppose the man of the moment, the man of the year, the man of the century in this is Bill. So take it away.
Well, I don't know if it was a matter of everybody getting tired of hearing me drone on about this stuff, or if maybe everybody thought it was perhaps somewhat interesting.
Yes and yes.
Combination of both. Yeah. But I think it was kind of interesting. We had to make some pretty seismic changes to the way we were doing things roughly about the time I came on the show. Well, we felt we did, or maybe I felt we did, and then I just pushed it all into reality. But at any rate, this week we're talking we're going to take some time to talk about our infrastructure here on the show, and see what you make of it here on mintCast. What it took to get it up and running, what changes have been made over the recent couple of years, and what we are hoping for the future. And when I say infrastructure, I mean like running a podcast is a combination of a few things, and especially one or two things are really, really important to keep the show up and running. And in our case, we've got it's a combination of a website, a service, if you will, that hosts the actual files that are being played on your MP3 players. There's YouTube, there's all kinds of stuff going on, and somebody has to learn how to manage these things. Otherwise, it will just all collapse. We don't use a service, as it were, like Red Circle or Blueberry or one of those to manage this show and keep the RSS feed going. So we have to make sure that these things are kept up ourselves. But anyway, for my part, my first episode was episode 377, which was titled 0 Days of Christmas. I came on dead smack at the end of the year. To say I was eager to make my presence known in this space would be understating it. At the time, and I suppose it hasn't really changed much, Linux podcasts were my favorite form of entertainment. mintCast does and always will hold a special place in my heart because of how comparatively more approachable this show is. Nearly anyone with a desire to come on camera and talk about Linux can find a home here, and I don't think I'm overstating that a bit.
Yeah, we don't have standards. We'll take anybody.
I mean, yeah, and for me, the thought that I could come on and talk about Linux with people and right or wrong, actually have a chance at doing that, I was really excited about it. And anybody that watches that episode would well, it was visible. The initial fun was slightly replaced by a sense of urgency early on during my time here. Almost immediately after my arrival, several very important things were beginning to fall apart. We were losing our free web hosting that we were relying on for some time. We were under the belief that we were going to lose our free Google Workspace, or it was actually called G Suite at the time, I think, or whatever it was called, account, given Google's announcement that they were discontinuing support for the grandfathered Workspace accounts that were set up very early on when Google first got into that space. Both of these things are critical infrastructure that, if not corrected, could have spelled the end of mintCast, if not just temporarily. I'll describe the two biggest things separately and discuss a little bit about what we put in place to keep us rolling. Okay, so the website. mintcast.org is probably more important to this show than any of my other shows, in that the actual RSS feed itself is generated by a plugin in our website called Blueberry PowerPress. My other shows, like Three Fat Truckers, for example, and, well, to a lesser extent, Linux OTC, we have Red Circle accounts, and Moss's show, Distro Hoppers Digest, also has a Red Circle account. Red Circle, when you upload, you could basically just get by with Red Circle and not have a website, not have anything else, because they handle all the distribution for you. You do have a website that you can point people to, where they could find the show and find out what it's all about. It's, it's not proper in that it's got a place to interact with people on it, but you could get by if you had meager expectations for the show. But since mintCast doesn't utilize a service like that, the website is of the utmost importance. Before my time, our website hosting was on a service called Bytemark, based in the UK. We had been relying on credits placed on the account before my time. Those credits ran out, and the service shut down the website. Much of the difficulty with Bytemark had nothing to do with the service itself, and everything to do with the fact that it was in the name of a person who hasn't really been a part of the show for some time. Fortunately, I was able to work with that person to get the account switched over to my name. That was quite an odyssey. It wasn't a completely straightforward thing to do. There was a lot of security hurdles to get past, and then getting my credit union to authorize the payments was another bit of an odyssey. It was important to get the account up and get the website back running, at least temporarily, just so that we could get a backup from it, so that we could migrate it to whatever other platform we were going to move it to. We use a WordPress plugin called it's WP Vivid, and what it does is it generates a backup of not just the website itself, but the database associated with it. So if ever we needed to move from there, it would be relatively painless. Somebody would have to know how to do it, but it could be done. Interestingly, it's automatically backed up every day to our Google Workspace account, which, as it turned out, didn't actually get shut down, but we'll get to that in a minute. When I started mintCast, I knew nothing about the networking nuances with regards to setting up a website and pointing a domain at it. I knew nothing about setting up WordPress itself. These were all things to be overcome if we were to move forward. My first thought, and indeed the first option we tried, was to put the site on a $5 Linode, which served as a quick solution to address the need for the website to have a home. It was probably necessary at the time because I hadn't quite figured out how I was going to handle running the site from my home infrastructure. Websites require a static IP address or some sort of dynamic solution so that DNS knows where to route the traffic from the internet to the service running the website. At the time, I was running on a residential service where the external IP address could change at any time whenever there's a power cycle on the router. The Linode was an elegant solution in the beginning, but quickly revealed itself to be inadequate for the task. If we were going to remain with Linode's solution, we would have to cough up more money for a more powerful VPS. The $5 for the Linode was already $5 more per month than the show was bringing in. mintCast has historically not solicited for donations from the listeners, though there have been conversations about setting up Patreon and other options for generating income. We've yet to pull that trigger on any of that, actually. If we are to be a zero-income show, we need to find solutions that are as close to zero as possible in terms of cost. There's no way to get everything down to zero, but with some intense learning and a bit of hard work, we are as close as I believe we can come. As of right now, the only reoccurring cost for mintCast is for the mintcast.org domain name itself, which is a yearly payment of less than $10, which I can live with for the time being.
This is not taking into account all the money that you have spent in equipment upgrades.
I consider some of that sort of a self-investment because I do use
It's
this
helped
stuff.
you on your other podcasts too.
It
but
has,
you
and
did it for mintCast.
yeah,
and you didn't
I
have
suppose
to.
if I were being honest, it would. I kind of felt the urgency from mintCast, and so yeah,
And we love you, Bill.
appreciate it. Once it was established that Linode wasn't going to be a viable long-term solution, I set forth learning about static IPs and reverse proxies. I also learned how to set up WordPress sites and took online courses in Docker. Most of this was on my phone, playing while I'm driving down the road. I don't claim to be a genius, but that was pretty cool. I had the internet service in my home upgraded to a symmetrical 500 gigabyte business service, which gave me a static IP address. This gave me a good jumping off point because it meant I can now host these services on bare metal hardware that I have full control of. The next hurdle was that now that I have a static IP address, it's still only one static IP address. Websites, for example, need 2 ports, 80 for HTTP traffic and 443 for the HTTPS traffic, routed through the router to the server itself. You cannot route a single port to more than one server at a time. This was a challenge that would need to be overcome given that I have several services I need to host on my infrastructure. I set my attention to finding a solution to that problem. This is where learning Docker became so important. There's a very well-managed Docker project out there called Nginx Proxy Manager, which runs in a Docker container itself, which what it does is it listens on ports 80 and 443, among others for, whatever services you're setting up. But we'll just, for the sake of explaining this, I'll just describe how it works for WordPress. It listens on those 2 ports, and then it takes the packets and routes them to the servers running the individual services. Like if it sees a packet come through that needs to go, it's coming on 443, and it needs to go to whatever server is running mintcast.org. It knows to route that to another internal port, which sends it directly to the machine running the WordPress container for that website. At first, I had our website running on a Raspberry Pi 400, which handled the task honorably, I think. That was not containerized. That was running on bare metal, set up from scratch. The only problem was that it meant more hardware, using more electricity, and one more piece of kit I had to manage remotely from the road, because as a lot of people know, I'm kind of over the road truck driver, and I'm out on the road all week long sometimes. So if there are problems with any of these servers, I might need to be able to WireGuard back into the home network and fix those problems. And the fewer devices, the better. Other than that, it was interesting to me that Raspberry Pi was doing a better job than the $5 Linode was, but arguably also comparatively that Raspberry Pi 4 or 400 is probably a bit higher spec than a $5 Linode is. For the sake of simplicity, the site was moved to an official WordPress Docker image container, which is where it is to this day. I see no reason to migrate it anymore. It seems to add no measure of resource intensiveness to the system and plays nicely with all the other containers running everything from Jellyfin, Audio Bookshelf. I even have a Calibre web ebook server, as well as other WordPress websites. All in all, I think I've got about 8 websites running between the 2 machines. mintCast is safe and secure for the foreseeable future. That's my promise to everybody out there. Okay, so that was the first challenge. now we had to deal with Google and their nonsense, and had to figure out what are we going to do about losing our grandfather G Suite account. That was kind of a big deal too, because we was using G Drive or Google Drive to store all of our FLACs. Every time we make a show, we all upload an individual discrete audio recording of our microphone. We need a place to put those in addition to where we keep our show notes. And it seemed as though we were losing that, so I had to learn how to set up Nextcloud. So for cloud storage and document collaboration, on January 19th, 2022, Google announced that they were shutting down the free tier of their grandfather G Suite. This was to be devastating for the show because we had been relying on that service for our free cloud storage to host our raw FLAC audio files as well as our collaborative show notes. Another problem with that was that our email address, mintcast@mintcast.org, exists because we're able to take advantage of this free service from Google, and they were killing it in favor of their new Google Workspaces service, which is arguably the exact same thing. It's basically just Tweedledum rather than Tweedledee. It was necessary to come up with a solution, and fast. Open source to the rescue. I set forth on the journey to learn how to spin up and administer a fully fleshed out Nextcloud server, complete with plenty of cloud storage and document collaboration, and that I did. We weren't sure what we were going to do about the email address, though we were at the time resolved to using the free mintcast@gmail.com address that the show had for years and never really used. I think it was used a little bit in the beginning. There were some emails in there from like 2003 or something. Shortly after getting all the Nextcloud stuff set up, Google backpedaled on their plans and continued to offer the service to folks like us who don't make any money off of the use of their service. But the writing was on the wall, and it truly was. Google was not to be trusted with our stuff. While we still use the mintcast@mintcast.org email address through Gmail, we have long since shifted our cloud usage over to Nextcloud server, which is set up and running as follows. The Nextcloud server itself is installed on bare metal, which means no containerization whatsoever is involved in the actual installation of Nextcloud. The machine is a seasoned but still truly capable Lenovo ThinkCentre M93P with a 4th gen i7, 32 gigs of ECC RAM. Moss found this machine on eBay for $99, and I grabbed it up quick. I've added the ECC RAM to it, as well as a Samsung SSD that runs the operating system and containers, as well as two 2TB Seagate Iron Wolf hard disk drives, which runs the ZFS mirror, and that is where all the stuff is stored. I also have periodic cold storage backups of the data using ZFS replication. The guys all have access to upload their FLACs as well as edit and create documents. There's all kinds of other functionalities like calendar, contacts, email, to-do list, and other functionalities that everybody can take advantage of.
And I maintain a full off-site backup.
Yeah. In order to have true document collaboration, such as the likes of Google Docs and MS Office 365, a second server is necessary to run the mechanism for the document management. For our part, we have a service called Collabora, which is basically web-based LibreOffice running in a Docker container, which our Nextcloud instance connects to as a resource for handling document collaboration. This solution works, though it is different enough from the commercial solutions to which most people are accustomed to have caused some pain points. It's been a non-zero amount of effort, though we've gotten on with it for better, for no other reason than it gives us content for the show. For the time
Can
being,
I comment here, Bill?
yeah, go right ahead.
Have they fixed things? They appear to have fixed things. Nobody has screamed at me for making the screen jump around today.
Yeah,
So
it's not really
maybe it
jumped
is-
around, no, but it's.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I guess I could talk about that a little bit. I was having some trouble with the actual container week before last, and it might not have been running correctly, and it may or may not have been my fault because I was forcing it to run. If anybody knows anything about Docker, there's two ways to get Docker containers up and running. You can either use a Docker run command, or you can use a Docker compose. And for the containers that are meant to work with Docker Compose, they will put an example compose in the documentation for the images on Docker Hub. And then everything can run from there. I was forcing Collabora to run from a Docker Compose file because it made no sense to me why it wouldn't work as long as you had the right commands and the right order and everything, but for some reason they would do an update and the whole thing would just fall apart. And so I just completely switched to using the Docker run command, which is comparatively simple for a container. It gets more complicated when containers rely on other containers, and you have to be able to, like WordPress, for example. If you ever set up a WordPress site, you have to have a database, and there has to be like a username and password. There's interaction, there's security interaction between those containers, and Docker Compose makes that whole thing a lot simpler because you're basically declaring all that information at the spin up time. You don't need any of that with Collabora. You really just need to tell it what port to use, and you can give it some information like a username and password, because it does have like a really, really simple admin panel that has a username and password with it. And so you would enter that with the run command. I started using that, and everything has been, I got to say, it's been smoother here in the last few days than it's ever been, honestly.
I definitely need to say it's nice not getting screamed at for making people's screens jump just because I'm trying to fix the show notes.
Yeah, if I could just figure out how to make the thing with the flag with your name on it go away, that'd be even better. But it works. I mean, it's not perfect. It's LibreOffice. It's full-featured LibreOffice. That's, if I was to offer any criticism about this, it's that what's needed here is a more boiled-down version of this, like Google Docs, where it's got the necessary stuff and not much of anything else. That way, there's less to get screwed up with some of these documents, because I think that's what people are expecting when they use a cloud-based word processor or whatever. But, we're getting on with it. So let's talk about money some more. As I stated earlier on, mintCast has never asked money from its listeners. It's been tempting to set up some kind of solution to offer those who want to help support the show financially. I'm not sure what's kept the whole thing from happening, other than perhaps everyone on the show may just be waiting on somebody else to do it. I, for one, would be happy to hear from the listeners whether at all you would be accepting of using a service like Patreon sponsors, or a combination of several. Do you feel as though the concept is vulgar in and of itself? What do you think? Because if I would like to set something up to offset some of the cost. We don't need much, but the electricity to run these things isn't free. The domain name isn't free. It's not a lot, but it's a non-zero amount. But if our listeners are philosophically opposed to it on a whole, then I will trash the idea and we'll never talk about it again. But it is something I would like to hear what the audience thinks. So please do so. Let us know. mintcast@mintcast.org, or you can comment in the YouTube or directly on the website. Don't be
I will
afraid to be
point out
completely
that-
honest.
I will point out that in the past, our users have been friendly to the concept. We ourselves have not been.
It's all about like agreeing on. Some people have strong opinions about things like Patreon. You know, Patreon has made some.
Yeah.
They've made some choices that have been less than stellar. However, you have to accept at the end of the day that if it's going to be successful, we have to go where the people already are, and that's, you know.
Well, I don't think so. I think if you're asking for donations, you can say where to donate to, and they shouldn't have a problem with that. I suggested Sponsus, which I learned about originally from Michael Tennell, because the kid was a regular listener to Linux podcasts, and he just graduated from college, and this was how he wanted to make his living. And I think it's great that we have an open source possibility that doesn't have all the problems that Patreon has.
I think we should be open to all of them, to be honest with you, because I think there are people out there that might just have a Patreon, and the idea of setting up a whole nother account and then linking that account to your bank account.
Let's hear from our users.
Yeah,
on that
let's hear
one.
what you guys think. Please let us know.
Yes, I mean, that's a fantastic segue, isn't it? To vibrations from the ether.
You're just ready to move on, aren't you?
Ah,
Well, I'm just saying it's a fantastic segue.
Oh, okay.
Well, anybody have any
Well-
questions about what I was outlining there, or did I do?
I never
such a
much cared for segues, Majid. They're
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of funky.
skate?
I must say, actually, as a general point, just to say, I have been quite impressed with Collabra. I know it's not perfect, and we've had some issues, but you know, it's a very full-featured replacement for the G Suite, really.
Yeah.
You know,
Our
I quite
biggest
like it.
issue was the fact that if someone made changes while it was going on, that all of a sudden the page jumped all over. And it's not doing that now. Thank you, Bill.
And I wonder also, because I had that proxied through Cloudflare, and I wonder if maybe that was causing some of that issue with the page jumping when the cache would update or something. So I turned that off. I didn't see a reason why that needed to be cached on Cloudflare. I mean, I understand our websites and that, but the services that we rely on really don't need that running. And I don't know what fixed the problem, but it does appear to have gotten better. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is we're using the free Collabra Online Developer Edition. The code is what it's called. Because it's a paid-for service, and it's not a cheap one for people that are paying for Collabra. You can use the code, but you're kind of riding the lightning in terms of the update cycle on it, because it is pretty aggressively updated. I use a service called Watchtower to keep all the containers up to date. And it works by like monitoring the containers I got running and then checking Docker Hub to see if there's an update to the particular tag of that container. It'll shut down, it'll download the new image and then just kind of elegantly shut down the container and then reopen the container or spin the container up using the updated image. And I've taken a little bit of flack about that on the other shows, but it seems to be the best way for somebody like me who needs this stuff to be automated to some degree. It's been said that, well, you can just find a version that works and just stay on that. Well, I don't know which one's working better than other ones. You know, it's quite a lot to deal with. So I leave it update on its own, And as long as I've got it set up right, I think we're good to go. But yeah, it hasn't been completely devoid of drama. But it was also a learning experience too. So
Well, we probably also need to do a backup of your entire setup with Docker images and everything.
I do need to back up the folder that's got all the Docker composes in it too, because that's some of those I had to build myself.
Shall we return from our vibrationist interruptus?
No, I just thought, it is. It would be useful to hear actually genuinely what the rest of the community think and what things we could do to maybe make things better, or what things we should avoid so that we don't make things worse. So as always, we always say, talk to us, let us know what you think. And so then I'll segue on to vibrations from the ether.
All right, I'll take this one if you don't mind. We
Go
just
ahead.
got the one, and it's from Anthony, and he says, "Dear Mintcasters, I wanted to thank you all for the time and effort you put into the podcast. It is very much appreciated, as I have learned about a lot of interesting topics by listening to the things that you uncover. It is no exaggeration to say that although I have the usual quota of friends and acquaintances, I don't know anyone at all who uses Linux or even knows what it is. So online communities and podcasts are very important. Also, in a recent episode, the subject of headsets and Bluetooth on Linux got a mention, and what a problem area this still is. My job requires use of conference calls using Zoom or Teams daily, and this has been awkward. I have tried using Bluetooth earbuds, Pixel Buds, which would pair okay, but no matter which audio configuration profiles I chose, the result was either decent output but voice quality that sounded to others like I was phoning from underwater, or better voice but only mono output. Also tried a Poly, aka Plantronics, Blackwire USB headset, but still had to compromise on quality. After a good deal of tweaking, cursing, and even changing up to Pipewire, I was about to give up and go back to joining calls from my phone when I looked at the headset leaflet and spotted that the USB end on the headset cable could be removed to reveal a 3.5 millimeter headphone plug. Plugged that into the computer headphone jack, and all the problems were solved. Lesson 1, read the documentation. But on a wider note, if this is the current state of headset Bluetooth audio on Linux, and I simply wasn't just doing it all wrong, quite possible, this is one of the areas that holds Linux back, particularly as these things work just fine on Windows, macOS, iOS, and Android. Perhaps this is a topic you could dive into a little more. Anywho, please keep up the fine work. All the best, Ant. Well, this has been a sticking point for me for a long time when it comes to Bluetooth. But what I ended up doing was moving away from Bluetooth and going to headsets if I wanted wireless that had dedicated dongles, like 2.4 gigahertz dongles. So they're paired together, and that seems to work a whole lot better than plain Bluetooth. But that's just me.
I do find that I suppose it's always a little bit of an issue, isn't it? Sometimes with Linux and wireless connectivity of some description, whether it's Wi-Fi cards, whether it's Bluetooth, whatever it might be. There's always seems to be a little bit of jank. I've found that being an issue. The interesting thing is that he makes a point about these things work fine under Android. Android, as we know, has a Linux kernel. I know it's not the same thing as GNU/Linux that we've got on our desktops, but that makes me think that from a foundational perspective, there shouldn't be any reason why Bluetooth or whatever would not work as well under Linux. Or is that incorrect?
No, I agree with you. It should work. I don't know why it doesn't.
I think it's
But-
because the individual devices, when you're talking about Linux, well, when you're talking about Android, these devices all have their own software stack. Like if you buy a Samsung device, I'm sure they've got their hardware, firmware stack in addition to all of the Linux stuff that might be
So-
underneath it.
What you're saying is the problem is that companies like Samsung or Alphabet are not, sending anything that they make upstream.
Yeah, what a huge surprise.
Hmm.
And I don't know that that would do us any good if they did, honestly, because these devices are so, well, the belief is that these devices are so different from each other that the firmware on one thing would be so different than the firmware on another that, I don't know. I mean, I just kind of anecdotally think that the reason is that we're relying on things like pulse audio and jack and pipe wire to make everything work, whereas the Android devices have somebody making sure that one individual device works. So it's just it's a matter of not enough eyeballs working on the thing that we need. And like Pipewire, Pulse Audio might work perfectly good on one person's laptop, but not on another's. So, yeah, when it comes to sound, it might just
But I mean
be...
but I mean that thing about fragmentation, different types of hardware and stuff like that. Well, I mean, Android's got loads of different types of hardware. Trying to find two devices which are the same is almost impossible.
Yeah.
That's why you have to be so careful if you're routing and romming and all that sort of stuff. So, but it seems to work there.
Yeah, I think when you I don't know that rooting and romming works all that well anymore, to be honest with you. I think your results will vary. I don't do much of it anymore because I've just kind of, sorry to say, I've given up on the whole mobile world when it comes to Linux. I mean, I don't know. So, I don't really want to get into this, but should we expect, Linux, which is made for computers, should we expect that to work on a phone or a tablet?
No, I'm not. I'm not saying that Linux should work on a phone, but I'm just saying that because it clearly doesn't. I'm just saying that if you've got an operating system such as Android, which has a Linux kernel, which has a lot of different types of hardware, which has lots of different types of, proprietary bits in it, and as a general rule, things such as Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, things like that work very well. Then why does that same thing not work when you're trying to attach your Bluetooth earbuds to your Linux desktop or your Linux laptop? Because those same, you mentioned some very good points, which are, there's this different there's different hardware and all that sort of stuff, but those pitfalls are also there on the phone side. So if Android can manage to do it, why can't desktop Linux? As I said, I don't know if it's an engineering thing. I don't know whether it's a case of optimizations and stuff like that. I suppose there's less skin in the game. If your radios don't work on your mobile phone, it's game over, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
People aren't going to buy your stuff. It's not really as big of an issue on laptops and desktops, is it? So I'm just asking the question. I don't know the answer.
I
I'm
just
asking the question.
think that for the most part, the people that are making the phones work really well are not contributing that code back upstream to be of any use to us whatsoever, if it would be at all. I think they do what they need to do to get their phone running, and it only runs for a short while, by the way. Well, you only get updates for a while, and then you're just stuck with whatever you've got. Whereas with us, this is a constantly evolving thing. I just think they're companies like Samsung and Google with their Pixel, and certainly iPhone, there's just absolutely no incentive to
No,
make any of
definitely.
that help us at all.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I can see that. All right. So I think that's it for vibrations from the ether. Moving on to check this out. Go on, Moss.
Okay, I've got a couple things here. Hacker Public Radio needs more shows. Apparently, show submission has dropped to a trickle. HPR has long had a hand in supporting mintCast and many other shows. The link is in the show notes. Please check it out. I already talked one person into submitting a show or four. I really think this is important to us. It has been an important part of our ecosystem for a lot of years.
This
So-
is a great place to get started. If you've ever wanted to make your own podcast, ever considered it, this is a great place to just go and try it out and get some feedback and see what other people think.
If
I
you
will point
have a
out that Distro Hoppers Digest had their first episode mirrored on Hacker Public Radio, and our episode got 243 downloads in the first month, and their episode had 2,000, more than 2,000. So it was a big boost for our podcast to have that as our starting point.
Well, how hard is it to, if you've already got an established show, to just start mirroring that onto?
He
Hacker.
doesn't want to do that.
He wants shows that are
Original.
Yeah, he wants original shows for HPR. I did ask him about going ahead and mirroring our old shows, and he goes, nope, not going to do that. So Ken Fallon has been a wonderful guy for a long time, but he is a Scot, and he wants to do things his way.
You don't say, do you? Yeah, because that would be the only way I could help, is if they were willing to take
Yeah.
and just host shows as a.
Well, it doesn't have to be a 3-hour show. Most of the shows are only 15, 20, 25 minutes long.
Yeah.
You just get what you had to say off your chest, send it to him. He schedules it, it broadcasts. There you go.
Or even put on just an opinion piece if you really want to. And it
Sure.
can be about anything, really.
And let's be honest.
When we got on this show, Joe and I and the crew that came with us, we were using Hacker Public Radio's Mumble server
which
for
has
all
since
of our
been shut
podcasts.
down.
It's been restarted as something else, but it is there. Anyhow, but
I'll
they
have to try to
supported us,
remember
and I
to-
just feel it's our turn to support them.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to try to remember to announce this on OTC as well. Somebody can remind me.
And the other thing I have here is it appears nobody is doing maintenance on linuxquestions.org. It's time for the best of 2023 voting results, and they haven't even posted a call for nominations yet. The most recent post from them, from Jeremy, was the 2022 results. So I've left a message on the site. It would be horrible if Jeremy is having problems with either his health or the site itself. I've been a member of LQ since 2008, and it has been of frequent benefit to me and perhaps millions of Linux users.
I've been a member since 2005, I think, and I've gotten an email from them with they'll send you an email listing all of the questions that have 0 answers.
Yeah.
You can set up an email list that way, and I've been getting that email all these years. I've never turned it off. It is, for anybody that has experience with the other old-fashioned type forums like the Arch forums and things like that, you'll notice that you get treated in a way that might be less than stellar, whereas linuxquestions.org has always felt more like an approachable sort of place to go and ask your questions, because there's no expectation. You might get the occasional jackass on there, but I found
not only that, but they even have space for you to set up your own blog. You can talk about whatever you want to.
Yeah.
I only talk about Linux on my LQ blog, but free blogging space. How many places can you still get that?
I mean, it is old school, still running the exact same way as it always has. It still looks exactly the same as it always has, but rightly so, I suppose.
So I hope Jeremy is okay and everything moves along, but we haven't seen anything. So say these felt the same to me. These two articles felt the same to me
Right.
because Ken Fallon has been just saying, well, he posts the calendar on HPR,
Yeah.
and there are more open spots than there are filled spots at this time. So anyhow,
Okay, then. Moving on to housekeeping and announcements. Thank you for listening to this episode of mintCast. If you like something you'd like to hear about, tell us. Send us an email at mintcast@mintcast.org. Join us live on YouTube. Post at the mintcast subreddit. Chat with us directly on Telegram and Discord, or post directly at mintcast.org. Our next episode will be 2 p.m. US Central Time on Sunday, February 18th, 2024. And there's a link to get that converted to your time zone in the show notes. Next roundtable live stream will be 2 p.m. US Central Time on Saturday, February 10th, 2024. And there's a link to get that converted to your time zone in the show notes. Next roundtable live stream will be 2 p.m. US Central Time on Saturday, February 24th, 2024. And there's a link to get that converted to your time zone in the show notes. Live stream information is at mintcast.org/livestream. So, time to wrap up. Go ahead, Joe.
Well, if you like the sound of my voice, I'm on a couple of other podcasts. I'm on the Linux Link Tech Show, which you can find at tllts.org. I'm on the Linux Lugcast along with Eric. That's at linuxlugcast.com. You can send me an email directly, jb@mintcast.org, or you can buy me a coffee on Ko-fi. Boss?
well, you can hear me every week on Full Circle Weekly News. Every month, roughly, on Distro Hoppers Digest. You can email me at bardmoss@pm.me. And my Mastodon is at zyvala@hosttux.social. Bill?
Go on, Bill.
You can email me, bill@mintcast.org. I'm bill_h on Discord. I'm at WCHauser3 at fostodon.org on the Mastodon. Also, check out my two other podcasts, Linux OTC and Three Fat Truckers. Links to both of those in the show notes. Majed?
Okay, so you can email me on drmajid@mintcast.org. I still have a Twitter /X, whatever, but I've got to be honest, I don't use it that much. But you can get me there on at atypical doctor 870. I'm also Atypical Doctor on Instagram and Threads, and I have the Atypical Doctor podcast available on Spotify. And if Eric was here, he would say that you can hear him and see him on Linux OTC and Distro Hoppers Digest podcasts, as well as Linux Saloons and Linux Lugcast streams. And if you'd like to get in contact with him, you can reach him by email at eric@mintcast.org, Discord Eric_Adams, Telegram, which is a link in the show notes, Matrix, link in the show notes, and Mastodon, again, link in the show notes. Before we leave, we want to make sure that we acknowledge some people who make mintCast possible. Bill, for our audio editing, because it always is Bill, nearly always. Although
Eric
Joe does it
last week.
sometimes as well.
Yeah.
Eric
the
did it last
Yeah.
time.
Oh, did he? Okay.
Or Skynet did.
Yes. Yeah, it was maybe it was that brave AI called Leo, which thought that we were a cryptocurrency wallet.
Oh, God.
That was hilarious, man.
Yeah.
Anyway, archive.org for hosting our audio files, Hubstar for our logo, InitRD for our animated Discord logo, Londoner for our time syncs and various other contributions. He really is the power behind the throne, if you want to put it that way, the one who really makes this possible. Bill for hosting the server, which runs our website maintenance, and the Nextcloud server, which we've all discussed earlier with the innards, and the Linux Mint development team for the fine distro we love to talk about. Thanks, Clem and company.
And co.
Woohoo!
Wrap.
And that's a wrap. Okay, who wants the good news and who wants the bad news?
Your
Oh, I want the
audacity
bad
went out
news.
on you again.
So it seems at some point about 15 minutes ago, the recorder app crashed and I didn't notice. So there's going to be, so I've got two upload files, audio upload files, and I'm not sure how much is missing in between the two. I'm sorry.
So
I'm gonna have to stop using this because this is now the second episode in a row it's done this. So I think I'm gonna go move back to Audacity. You know, if something is what's that phrase? If something's too good to be true, it often is.
Do you
yeah.
have a 2-hour cutoff? Like, is
No.
the first
No.
section literally 2 hours long?
No.
Okay.
Are the two together 2 hours and 30 minutes long?
The two together are about an hour and a half.
You're missing an hour.
Yeah, I don't know when the hell that happened. I'm sorry.
The
Well,
1 hour mark?
Well, yes, obviously. I mean, now that I think about it, yes. It must have been when I nipped out and then I come back and I didn't check. So sorry about that.
You can't be staring at it the whole time.
Yeah, shit happens. I run KDocker, right, which like puts Audacity and a couple other things down in the system tray to where I don't even have it minimized anymore. So if it went out, I would, even with 3 screens, I can't be bothered.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I had this. I've got another bloody screen here, and I still didn't bloody. And it doesn't matter. You know, them's the breaks. The good news I was going to say was that I thought that was a really good show. Actually,
I agree.
I enjoyed that.
Actually, we haven't done an in-depth on anything in a while, and I think it might be good to do like an in-depth on Nginx, which means Bill again.
I can talk about the reverse proxy manager. I've never used it as a what do they call it, a web server, because it is also a alternative to Apache for a web server, but I've never used it for that. I've only ever used the reverse, and that's all graphical too. It's done through a web admin interface. But I would enjoy the opportunity to talk about that. I don't know, maybe Eric would know more about Nginx, or maybe we could talk about the differences between the two. We could all do a little research.
Okay, so I'm going to start uploading, and as you know what happens whenever I start uploading, my internet dies.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, gentlemen, and Joe.
Been great, Majid.
Yeah.
Thanks for making that clear that you weren't speaking about me when you said gentlemen. I appreciate that.
Yeah, well done.
It's just part of my fantastic communication skills. Honed over many years in the health profession.
Well, we have a lot of doctors who are friends. However, none of them are anesthetists.
Yeah. Yes. So anyway, I best get going because it is almost 11 o'clock here. So.
Oh my.
All right. So I shall catch you on the next one.
Yep.
See you later.
See ya.
Has to be Shasta. Well, I'm supposedly uploading. The upload system is different than it was. It just said 14 seconds left, and then it said 1:06 left, and now it says 10 seconds left. What was that sound?
What?
Majid leaving.
Oh, okay. Because I did hear something like that during the show, and that might have been when he cut off.
No, that was when I left and came back.
I
was having some connection issues.
So your new fiber is working well, I take it.
We'll see. No, I just dragged and dropped, and it is not.
It didn't say anything for a long time, and then after a while it said 14 seconds left, and it keeps changing. Okay, mine's up 179.9. That's not bad for almost 3 hours, 2.5 hours.
530.
Ha ha. Well, guys, I am done. Great show. Love you guys.
Yeah, likewise.
I'm also out of coffee.
Oh God, how can you breathe? All right, fellas. Oh, I guess we could
Sayonara.